this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
You're listening to a podcast, so you're doing something else too, like maybe scrolling home listings on Redfin, saving places you like without thinking you'll get them, because that's what house hunting has become. But Redfin isn't built for endless browsing. It's built to help you find and own a home. Redfin agents close twice as many deals as other agents, which means when you find a place you love, you've got a real shot at getting it. Redfin helps turn saved listings into real addresses. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
Tired of spills and stains on your sofa? Wash away your worries with Anabay. Anabay is the only machine washable sofa inside and out, where designer quality meets budget-friendly prices. That's right, sofas start at just $699. Enjoy a no-risk experience with pet-friendly, stain-resistant, and changeable slip covers made with performance fabric. Experience cloud-like comfort with high-resilience foam that's hypoallergenic and never needs fluffing. The sturdy steel frame ensures longevity, and the modular pieces can be rearranged anytime. Shop WashableSofas.com for up to 60% off site-wide, backed by a 30-day satisfaction guarantee. If you're not absolutely in love, send it back for a full refund. No return shipping or restocking fees. Every penny back. Upgrade now at WashableSofas.com. Offers are subject to change, and certain restrictions may apply.
Hey everybody, Robert Evans here, and I wanted to let you know this is a compilation episode. So every episode of the week that just happened is here in one convenient and with somewhat less ads package for you to listen to in a long stretch if you want. If you've been listening to the episodes every day this week, there's going to be nothing new here for you, but you can make your own decisions.
Garrison started talking about crimes, and so I was like, okay, I'm gonna hold off on pressing the record.
I didn't mention crime at all.
Actually, that's
that was
true.
James.
That's true. James said the word crimes, and I was
James is
like,
the one that brought up doing crimes. I would never talk about doing crimes. Oh, welcome to It Could Happen Here, where we never talk about anything illegal. With us today is myself, Garrison, James Stout, and Mia Wong.
That's right. We are talking about crimes today, actually, but we're not doing any crimes, crucially, because we never would.
Yeah, like for example, well, actually, I don't know if it's technically illegal to talk about jury nullification on air. I don't think they can stop you from saying the words. I think they can. I think you don't have the right to do it, but you have the ability, I think is the way a lawyer explained it to me. But they also said, I'm not your lawyer before that, so take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah. You probably shouldn't be describing how to do jury notification or Googling it if that's in your future.
Stay tuned for our upcoming episode, how to nullify yourself.
How to nullify your jury. Yeah. How to nullify your jury. And that will be our final episode. Okay. So, no, we're not talking about jury duty today. We are talking about crime. The people doing the crime in this episode, shockingly, are the cops. So I want to start on October 28th, 2016. Some of you can probably cast your mind back then, the last week of the pre-Trump era.
Yeah.
Yeah. So inside the captain's office at the sheriff's station of Rancho San Diego, one of the most expensive zip codes in the country, Captain Marco Garmo was making a deal. Garmo, along with Giovanni Tilotta, who's a licensed San Diego gun dealer, sold a Glock handgun an AR-15 style rifle, and a Smith & Wesson handgun to local defense attorney Vikas Bajaj inside Garmo's office. Garmo coordinated backdated paperwork to avoid the 10-day waiting period required by California law for handgun purchases, and supplied Bajaj with misappropriated San Diego Sheriff's Department issued ammunition.
Oh, fun!
Yeah, good times. Good times. So he's really thriving in his side hustle here, Marco Garmo. I've used the word misappropriated because that's what the DOJ used. I'm guessing the more vernacular term would be stolen here. I think he's...
So when you say issued, is this ammo that like was supposed to be given to a cop, or is this stuff they had an impound?
No, I think it's supposed to be given to a cop. I think...
Hell yeah.
I think he's good. I think he's gone into the armory and just grabbed a few boxes of ammo and stole them.
Or cops have just turned into the Afghan army. It's amazing.
Yeah. The ANA. They've got the what's that guy who had the he had the night vision on backwards or something. That was the Taliban guy. Yeah. Interestingly, what they have in the compound, Mia, is another story that maybe we should do another day. I also PRA'd that, the weapons that are impounded. Jesus Christ, they have some shit. They have a full auto shotgun, a bunch of NFA items, and they keep them all for lab testing in theory, so they can be oh, well, this person was shot. What does that wound look like? Well, let's get our armory out from the fucking and shoot some ballistics gel and see if that helps us.
It's
NFA?
like that scene from 2008's The Dark Knight where Christian Bale as Batman fires a ridiculously loud gun in a sealed bunker, absolutely destroying both his and Alfred's hearing for the entire rest of the movie, which is why they make so many bad choices.
Fascinating, yeah. I didn't know there was a character called Alfred in Batman.
Yeah.
They really Welshed him on the names because, Batman is a cool name, the Joker, cool name.
Fucking
Alfred.
You not know about Alfred?
Do you not know who Alfred Pennyworth is?
No.
He's the one British character in Batman. He is your culture. When people think of British people, they think of Alfred J. Pennyworth.
No, my culture's not a costume, Garrison.
Well, I have bad news.
No, they've been disgusted that this is the point of reference, not one of our many wonderful modern British role models.
Alfred's great. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, yeah, no. Okay,
he is a working class hero. He was a wait. Our butlers are working class, right?
Oh God!
Let's cut this discourse off very quickly.
I would say petty bourgeois, but
yeah, it's kind of complicated because you're working directly for a billionaire, and you're living in the billionaire's house, and you're living a very upper class life, but you still are working. It's kind of complicated.
What is your relationship to the means of production, though?
Wow.
Well, but it's all service. I don't know. I feel like we have to do a divide here between I think the gender division of labor between maid and butler is very important.
I love that we're debating if Alfred is based or not.
Yeah. So you can find Garrison on Twitter at I Write Okay. All right, so we've made it to paragraph 2, everyone. In February of 2019, federal agents executed a search warrant at the Rancho San Diego Sheriff's Station. Later that year, they arrested Captain Marco Garmo. In 2021, Garmo pleaded guilty to trafficking over 100 guns, which were deemed unsafe for civilians. His sentence, I shouldn't say civilians, because cops are also civilians, right? But non-cops. At his sentencing, the judge said Garmo was almost becoming a mob boss of sorts. Cool. What you want to strive for as a sheriff's captain. Garmo admitted to engaging in straw purchases, which is buying guns with the intent of transferring them to someone else. He also acknowledged tipping off an illegal marijuana dispensary that was about to be searched in order to give...
Based.
Yeah.
Come on.
Nothing this guy did is inherently wrong. It's the fact that he only did it to certain people. So that was his cousin who owned the marijuana dispensary. He was also engaged in illegal consulting with other dispensaries, which... I don't fully... Yeah, I'm guessing his consulting emerged to being hey, the cops are on their way tomorrow. Maybe stop being a dispensary by the time they arrive.
Yeah, that seems like that seems like a very classic the cops take a cut kind of arrangement that they're calling consultancy.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. A lot of the things in this DOJ thing are like really fantastically phrased. So Garmo and his co-defendant, Wael Will Anton, also helped paying clients skip the waiting list for a difficult-to-obtain concealed carry permit. As part of this scheme, Anton took a legal cash payment to a county clerk who ensured favorable treatment for his clients. Garmo might have flown a little too close to the sun with this one, but it's not actually that unusual for gun laws to have carve-outs for rich people. Often those carve-outs don't involve cops stealing ammo, but it's pretty easy if you're wealthy enough to work your way around firearms legislation, which is kind of what I want to get into today. So while Garmo did go to jail for gun trafficking and multiple other crimes he was doing, the sale of so-called off-roster firearms by law enforcement officers in California is relatively common, and there's not much that's been done to prevent it since Garmo was arrested. So to understand this, I think you have to understand California's incredibly complicated firearms laws, which probably requires like an undergraduate degree. But to give a brief summary, California introduced its gun roster in 2001. And like many of our laws, it has its roots in entrenching systemic inequalities. In this case, legislators were trying to ban something called a Saturday night special. And people know what that is?
No.
It's a small, concealable, affordable handgun. It's like there was these guns that came out in like the 80s and 90s that were like super small, very cheap, very simple, very concealable, and
are they also shit?
Well, that's the thing, right? So this is really fascinating. So in practice, right, these were at least culturally associated with like black communities, right? That's you see them in sometimes like. Certainly, like there was a stigmatic reference to like it is these guns that is causing violence, and we're not going to fucking look at inequality at all, right? We're just going to ban the guns. Are they shit? Is an interesting question because California introduces legislation which said that handguns had to be drop safe, so that means you can drop them and they can't go off. That is generally a desirable feature in a handgun. Able to fire 600 rounds without more than 6 malfunctions. And have a manual safety device. Later on, they added another thing that would make the gun only fire when it had a magazine inserted. And so they put all these rules in place and had said manufacturers had to submit guns for testing. All the guns they were going after passed the testing. So I guess they're not as shit as one had suspected, which is kind of like that is the intent. They are laboring under that misapprehension, but it seems like these guns, which are very cheap, actually pass the testing just fine. So if you look at the California roster, so once those guns have passed that testing, right, they go on a roster. And that roster, like, it's done by SKU, so like by the individual code that's given to the gun. And you can look up the California roster, it's online still, and like there are hundreds of cheap small handguns that are on it. So they failed in that regard. But they created this kind of bizarre system where most manufacturers had to make a California compliant model if they wanted to sell in California, right? Because it had to have this magazine disconnect, which means that the gun won't fire without the magazine in it, which is not a usual thing for semi-automatic handguns to have. Like if you are outside of California and you have like a normal, like a Glock, for instance, it doesn't have that, but you would need one that did in California. So that means that these guns are going to have a much, much smaller economy of scale, right? They're going to be more expensive. Manufacturers also have to pay for the testing and submit 3 models. So what it de facto means is that fewer guns are available in California. But it doesn't really become a big issue until 2013, when the DOJ in California add a micro-stamping requirement. But they added it earlier, actually, but in 2013, they certified it was possible for micro-stamping to happen.
Can I ask something? But so is the roster the list of guns you're allowed to buy?
Yes.
Okay.
And if it doesn't appear on the roster, we're going to get into that. You can actually buy it, but you can't buy it new from a store. So you can buy it used. And there are 2 ways that these used handguns can enter the state, right? One of them is if you move to the state. So let's say Garrison moves to LA, right? And they bring with them
horrifying.
Yeah, just to enjoy.
Just like a Vulcan minigun.
Yeah. They bring with them an M1 Abrams tank.
Yeah, it's our balloon shooting gun.
yeah. Everyone on the West Coast has to have one now. So it's actually different for rifles, sadly, but they bring with them pistols, and those pistols are not on the California roster. They can keep them and they can sell them, right, to a California resident. The other way that these guns can enter and be sold is cops are exempt from the roster, right? So
Oh boy.
Yeah. And when I say cops, I am speaking in the broadest possible terms because a variety of peace officers are exempt, to include employees of the California State Horse Racing Board.
So I'm assuming park rangers can do this, right?
I think it depends what you are within the park ranger, and it seems to be there is actually a list that's in the legislation, but it seems to be largely like at the discretion of the gun shop. Like in practice, they could get in trouble, but like I've heard of like firefighters and EMTs being able to purchase off-roster guns, which is fucking not in the legislation. Like, it is also kind of funny, but like, in theory, it would depend on like what unit you were in, or they could contact your like park ranger office and be like, hey, this girl is trying to buy a gun. Like, does she use this at work? Because the idea is that they would have the most up-to-date weapons to carry at work, right? Or that they could buy themselves, even though they get issued guns. So like if you need a gun as a cop, you get issued a gun, right? So what it means in practice is that there's a thriving market in off-roster firearms, but there's also a massive price premium, right? They often sell for 2 or 3 times their MSRP, even though they're used. And I did a little digging into this, and I looked at one particular item, which was a P365, a SIG P365, which is a fairly like a popular pistol, right? But after 2013, California didn't allow any new guns to be added to the roster unless they microstamp their bullets. Microstamping is a little feature where the firing pin of the gun stamps the casing, not the bullet, with a little tiny stamp, which is unique to the gun, right? Or it stamps it with the serial number of the gun. So in theory, this would allow you to pick up the casings at a murder scene and be like, well, they were fired from this gun, and this gun is registered to this person, therefore we got someone to talk to, right?
Just pick up the casings.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely no ways around this.
Although, I mean, admittedly, the one thing I've learned over the years is that people are really lazy when they're doing crimes, and
so true.
You could be slightly less lazy and get caught significantly less.
That is my biggest advice to the illegalists. Literally think 5 minutes beforehand.
Yeah. Also, don't tweet your crimes.
Evergreen statement.
Yeah. It's one of our mottos here. You could also just use a revolver, I guess, and that wouldn't eject the casings. But because there are no guns. So in 2013, right, the DOJ says you are not allowed to add a gun to the roster unless it microstamps. And we've decided that microstamping is possible. No firearms manufacturer will make a gun that microstamps because other states will require all guns to microstamp once that technology is available.
So they just don't build it?
So they just don't do it. Yeah, it is very funny. It's like car companies just being like, fucking, you know what? If we put airbags in that bad boy, they're going to make us put airbags in all the cars.
You know, this is a thing that I've run into a lot. I think is really interesting, which is like, okay, the specific combination of regulatory state and corporations being required to do a thing gives you a bunch of really, really weird like outcomes that are like not what you would expect when you're writing the legislation, which makes them ineffective. Like, I mean, like the most famous one is like the Clean Air Act actually worsened air quality for a huge amount of time because they put in this exception for like existing coal facilities under the assumption that people would just like, you know, build new coal facilities and thus be like, and thus like have better like clean air technology. And no one ever did. They just left these old coal facilities running. Or the other one, like everyone always talks about those fucking why the giant SUVs keep getting bigger. And the reason for that is actually, I mean, it kind of is sort of fascist psychosis, but like the actual reason for that is Obama era pollution controls on cars, right? Had these fuel emission standards. But the larger your car is, like the worse the fuel emission standards are. So in order to get around the fuel emission things, they just keep making bigger cars.
Make it bigger, amazing.
Yeah, and this shit just like, I don't know. This is I think a pretty good argument against a sort of regulatory state being able to contain like capitalism doing horrifying shit is like every single time someone tries to make an air pollution thing, it just makes it worse.
Yeah, they just create perverse incentives to do something which is like just stupid and polluting as opposed to
or they
polluting.
just don't comply. Like with the microscopic thing, they're just like, no, like
Yeah.
fuck this. Like you simply will not.
Yeah, the specific interaction of like people who elevate them, who make it to the California legislature on one hand, and gun companies on the other hand, just leads to this complete intransigence where like anytime a law is written, it is like someone has found an end run or a loophole before it comes into practice. Do you know what won't legally smuggle guns into California and sell them for 2 to 3 times the retail price, Mir?
Is it all the firms that are doing child trafficking? And
That's right, the Washington State Highway Patrol.
We're back, and we're talking about cops selling guns for a lot of money in Southern California. So, Marco Gama wasn't the only cop who chose a life of crime, as it turns out.
Who could have guessed?
Yeah,
Because every other one did.
Yeah. Shockingly enough, this practice is pretty common. So a Gardena police officer in 2021 was also convicted of making 41 illegal off-roster sales in a year. And at least 6 LA officers have been found to be engaged in illegal firearms transfers, according to a 2021 LA Times investigation. So that's 8 in a single year, if you're keeping track. And it's pretty common to see people like posting about this, like if you go on to like there's a California Guns Forum where people will be like where they sell guns, right? Where you don't actually sell the guns on the internet because that's illegal, but people will post it and then say, meet me at this gun dealer and we'll do the background check. And you'll see people being like, oh, like I'm LEO. I have a friend who's LEO and like happened to be selling this gun new in package. I bought it to carry it on patrol, but I decided I didn't like it. You know, like that's the theoretical canard here, right?
Oh God. Okay, the thing this reminds me of specifically is a very, very weird use case of like people in Magic the Gathering tournaments where you're not legally allowed to both draw and split the prize money, so you have to say this incredibly complicated series of sentences where you're like, I want to draw, and then new conversation, can we split the prize money? It's like I have to like say this exact series of words in order to make it clear that I'm not doing exactly what I'm doing and breaking the law.
Yeah, this is how the law works, right? Like it always ends up being some kind of like totemistic magic incantation that you can say, and then the thing that they're trying to fucking stop obviously no longer applies to you and you can do what you want. Like it's incredibly asinine. So in mid-2021, I wanted to get a sense, right, when I was doing this, of how many of these off-roster guns there are in California, to get a sense of like exactly how much of a farce the attempt to create this roster has been. So I've been going after this for a while, but in the middle of 2021, there was an assembly bill passed called Assembly Bill 2699, if you're interested. And the bill required the Department of Justice to send a letter to owners of off-roster weapons, which California officially calls unsafe handguns, to remind the people who own them of the laws surrounding them and to whom they could transfer them, right? I first became aware of this letter because someone decided to post it online. And that kind of gave me an opening where... because I can't PRA the names of the people who own the guns, right? Or even where they live, because obviously that's protected information and it probably should be. And I don't think that information is even actually stored by the state. But I can PRA the letters they sent out. So PRA is a Public Records Act request, right? It's what people might know as a FOIA. And so I did that, and it took me more than a year, and it cost me more than $100. But eventually I managed to get the DOJ to send me the information, which showed that at least at the time I got it, which was the middle of 2021, 4,510 firearms have been obtained by the subsection of the law that allows exemptions for police officers. There are some other exemptions for like antique and collectible firearms as well, so it's not clear that all of those were cops. They also noted that it had sent 213,804 notices to the owners of off-roster weapons, which... Yeah, it suggests that, like, if we think of that, the roster became a serious issue in 2013, right? So that suggested about 10,000 10,000 weapons a year since the roster began in 2001 have entered the state that are off roster, which kind of makes the point that it's a rather farcical attempt at gun control, right? But it still is that the roster, which I don't think you're fine, right? You can buy a very effective gun in California, like as we have seen, like they're very effective at killing people. But it does kind of make it a joke that if you have enough money or a friend who's a cop, then this doesn't apply to you, right? Then you've over 200,000 of these guns, which are supposed to be like banned, in circulation as long as you're wealthy enough to buy them. I tried also to PRA if any of these guns have been involved in crime or murder, and they wouldn't tell me that. And it's always worth pointing out that like the cops themselves are issued guns which are illegal for civilians to purchase, right? Or it's not possible for them to purchase them new, I should say. The off-roster guns are issued to the cops, right? So by definition, some of these guns have been used in the accidental shooting of bystanders, shooting of officers by themselves, and shooting of officers by other officers that have occurred in California since the roster began. And so, but sort of by definition, off-roster guns to kill some people. So this isn't actually the only way that being wealthy can get you around gun laws. And I want to go a little further east for my next example. I want to go, in fact, to a little town called Lake Arthur in New Mexico. If you guys, are you guys familiar with this part of the world?
Not that specific. I lived in New Mexico very, very briefly when I was a small child, but not there. So I've been using Google Street View. That's my my dive deep. It appears to be the back arsehole of nowhere. And in Lake Arthur, they have one cop who, it turns out, was a volunteer and was being paid $1 a year. Yeah. So this is where the problem starts. This guy is called William Norwood, and I'll issue a spoiler here that William Norwood is no longer a cop, nor does a department exist. And that's because Norwood was running a scam that took advantage of something called LEOSA. LEOSA is the Law Enforcement Officers Safety Act. And what the Law Enforcement Officers Safety Act does is allow cops from any state in the union to conceal carry a gun in every state in the union. So this was a big deal. Yeah, I think you might be able to see where this is going. This was a big deal before the Supreme Court Bruen decision, right? The Bruen decision was the one that significantly reduced the impediments in between you and getting a concealed carry weapons permit. It didn't totally remove them, and it didn't make it any less expensive. And California seems to be going about trying to make it even more expensive, which is bullshit. Like, everyone should have the same rights, regardless of how wealthy they are. But if you were covered by LEOSA, right, if you're a law enforcement officer, you could conceal carry anywhere. So this is very desirable for some people. One of those people is Robert Mercer. Do you guys remember Robert Mercer?
No, I do not.
Okay, so Mercer is a big-time Donald Trump appreciator.
Oh, yeah, he's that, like, super rich guy. Yeah.
The Breitbart guy, the Cambridge Analytica guy. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so this guy is rolling in it. And he actually hosted like a like success party soon after the 2016 election. This guy is definitely pivotal to the whole Trump scene, right? Like his bankrolling of Breitbart, of Cambridge Analytica. He, as it turns out, is also a cop in this little New Mexico town, which is kind of weird, right? Especially when you consider that 150 other people are also cops in this New Mexico town.
Oh, it's one of these scams.
Yep. So that's one cop for every 2.9 residents.
Jesus.
Yeah. And it turns out they're probably not doing much copping, but they are doing at least a certain amount of volunteering. It's actually unclear how much. So the Lake Arthur treasurer was Bloomberg did some PRAs around this, and it turns out that Mercer was what's called an honorary member of the police department, but there are no records to indicate they actually did any policing. But nonetheless, he took advantage of LEOSA, right? And thus carried in all 50 states. So these jurisdictions, there are several of them. Another famous person who's taken advantage of this is a friend of the podcast, Steven Seagal.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Steven Seagal, who apparently has been a volunteer cop for a very long time, and actually was doing some copping, according to a reality TV show he made called Steven Seagal Lawman.
You know, the thing about that show, right, is it's like
Are you going to come out and defend the show? Are you pro the show?
Yeah.
Really?
Here's my thing on this show, right? Like, obviously, Seagal's doing stuff that's really messed up, but it's also unclear to me how much worse what he was doing is than the average cop. Like, probably what he's doing is worse than the average cop, but I don't think it's like I don't think it's as bad as like a Chicago Special Operations Unit.
Wow, I can't believe you just came out in defense of Steven Seagal.
Being a cop specifically.
He has work to do to reach like the true upper echelon of like
I don't know, man.
shitty cops.
This is a man who gave his time freely to volunteer for Joe Arpaio.
This level of apologism coming from you right now is simply shocking. I don't know how to deal with this. This is Seagal apologism.
Segalogism.
Segalogism, yeah.
That is what I was working my way towards, but I couldn't finish it.
Yeah, thank you for delivering the coup de grace. Yeah, Mia coming out with the some cops are bastards take. Scab. Okay, so what is Garrison's deceased? They've died. Okay, so these badge factories, like the ones in Lake Arthur, generally trade influence, cash, or connections for a badge and the right to carry a gun nationwide. Mercer and his son-in-law George Wells have supported the town generously. So Mercer's kind of the best investigated example of this, right? Because Bloomberg went after him. Bloomberg the publication, not Bloomberg the dude.
He went down there personally to sort this one out. Nothing's getting past old Bloomberg.
He formed an alliance with, apparently at one point this police department did do a raid on a meth house, and I would love to see like Bloomberg forming an alliance with the meth dealers of Lake Arthur to fucking take on Mercer. So
if Bloomberg can take on 9/11 single-handedly, surely he can bust up whatever operations going down in New Mexico.
150 Steven Seagals. Would you rather fight one Bloomberg-sized Steven Seagal?
and don't bother messaging
Bloombergs.
Also, do not bother messaging me. I know he wasn't the mayor during 9/11. That was the joke. Don't bother messaging me. I already know. Thank you.
No. Send it to at iWriteOK.
Garrison's Twitter again at iWriteOK. He also famously dropped Staten Island Phil Bloomberg. You guys don't know about Staten Island Phil?
I have not at all.
No, okay, that's it. Staten Island Phil is a groundhog. This will be in a Bastards episode as well. So it's a second mention of Staten Island Phil for some people. Staten Island Phil is a groundhog, similar to Puxatawny Phil. But he lives in Staten Island, so and unfortunately, Phil. Well, would we say that?
Yes.
That's a second, pretty disgusting take from Mia, anti Staten Island.
This is my Mia gets canceled episode.
Yeah,
going back in time and getting rid of the Yankees, things of this nature.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Bill de Blasio dropped the groundhog on its head and it died.
What?
And Bill de Blasio blames the groundhog for its reduced popularity.
Everyone who's been the mayor of New York is such a weird
piece of
type
shit.
of unhinged.
Yeah, it's true.
Like, fucking, the current mayor just went on, like, TV today and talked about how he has this magic sponge so that he can ring... Yes, so that he can absorb despair and wring the despair out.
What the fuck?
I'm so sick. The only thing I saw out of New York was the whole, like, there shouldn't be any separation of church and state. That is so much funnier.
He's doing a sham wow for sadness in New York.
It's wild.
Oh, what a place. What a town. All right, so if you're wondering how much it costs for Mercer and his son-in-law to carry guns everywhere, they paid at least $93,000 to set up this thing called the Southeast New Mexico Police Reserve Foundation. which is doing the valuable work of supporting reserve cops in southeast New Mexico, because they are the thin blue line between us and people not being able to buy concealed carry permits in all 50 states, I guess. Under its bylaws, at least half the foundation's net dues were required to be paid to police departments whose reservists were members of the foundation. At the time of its founding, all of the members were Lake Arthur reservists. So just a good public benefit, probably just money going around in circles. He also paid for Lake Arthur officers to get SWAT training in Vegas. Again, there is only one full-time cop, and he's a volunteer. So some of the lads went to Vegas, I guess, and this was a donation that was probably tax deductible. The way that this came out is when a quote-unquote firearms expert from North Carolina got drunk and shot his brother-in-law in the leg. And people were
great.
like, why were you carrying, bro? Like, you're a cop? And from there, things began to unwind. A lot of the other clients for this place are people like bodyguards. They were clients, cops, volunteer officers, I should say. They're people who do close protection for wealthy folks, right? And carry guns as part of that work. And I'm guessing it's their employers who are making these significant donations to Lake Arthur that probably allowed these people to be reserve officers, which allowed them to carry in all 50 states, which in turn allowed them to protect these wealthy people, right? So it's another, and like, it's important to understand that, like, New York, for instance, declined before the Bruen decision, a concealed carry permit applicant from like an FBI informant who had taken down a biker gang. They were like, no, you don't need to carry a gun. Like, it was almost impossible for people, even if they were like helping the cops, to get concealed carry permits in some parts of the United States. And like in California was very hard, lots of places before Bruen. Like, I think, was it Nancy Pelosi had a concealed carry permit, or Feinstein or someone?
Okay, this is the whole thing. Okay, so this was Feinstein. One of the other scams for this is you can get deputized as a federal marshal. And so there's like a bunch, like Feinstein's rumored to have done. There's like a bunch of a bunch of sort of like California like Congress people have done this. That like they get deputized as marshals, and so they can do this shit.
Yeah, incredible stuff. Yeah, it's so. I guess what I want to come back to is that, like, all of these laws, right? All of these gun control laws are circumventable if you have enough money, right? Yeah. So if you want a nice brand new gun that doesn't microstamp, it doesn't have the magazine disconnect, and like modern carry guns especially are a lot nicer than they were in 2013, right? They're smaller, they have a higher capacity. You can put a little red dot sight on them if you want to, and if you want one of those things, you can have it in California as long as you're rich. And if you're not, then you can't. The same applies with this 50-state carry, right? If you want to carry a gun all around the country, and even now with Bruen, states are not required to recognize each other's concealed carry permits, right? So I have a concealed carry permit in California. It's not recognized by any other states because California doesn't recognize any other states' carry permits. So I can apply for one in Arizona that costs me more money. But if you want to carry in all 50 states, you can just make this donation to the cops, right? You can almost all of these things, right? These aren't the only examples. Rick Mia cited the federal marshal thing. Another one is the NFA, right? The National Firearms Act. Yeah, Act. Which, like, essentially, it's not illegal to have a suppressor. It's not illegal to have a short-barreled rifle. It's not illegal to have a machine gun, actually. You just have to spend a shit ton of money to get one. Which Mercer has a collection of machine guns, I guess. So all of these things, yeah, it's great. It's fine. It's great that we live in a country with two tiers of rights for people.
Those machine guns are totally going to be used for completely normal things, like come out of the armory in 20 years.
A totally normal guy who will use them for normal stuff, and just I'm sure likes to like make holes in paper with his friends. And it's not problematic at all that, like, to be as rich as this guy is, you have to be a problematic dude. And maybe those are the people who shouldn't be having guns. Yeah. But instead, it's going to be poor people who can't be having guns. And I think regardless of what you and it's perfectly reasonable to think that like there should be fewer guns in this country. It's perfectly reasonable to believe that. And I think like it's perfectly reasonable to think, what the fuck should we do about the fact that kids get shot in schools? That's not an unreasonable stance at all. But if the way around it is saying, well, only rich people get to shoot people, then that's not really a solution. Like, it's just kind of the appearance of one. And I don't think any of us, certainly if we're on the left, should really support that. And yeah, that's where we are in California, which is great.
Yay.
So that's about all we've got on this. If people are interested in seeing more about either the Mercer case or the public records I have, we'll put them all up on our sources page. You can find our sources page on the It Could Happen Here website, and we put all our sources up there for all our episodes. So yeah, go check that out. Anything else to finish off with, guys?
The cops having guns, bad. Cops being cops, bad. Cops, bad?
Yeah. Oh, what about Steven Seagal then, mate? This is a dramatic change of form from your earlier stance.
Look, I only ever argued that he was slightly more violent than a normal cop. That was the extent of my argument. He is only slightly more violent than a regular cop.
She is flip-flopping on the some cops about its issue. Again, You can send me your opinions on the police. She's on Twitter at iWriteOK.
Let's talk about modern home shopping. It's sort of become a fun side hobby, right? Scrolling listings at night, dreaming about kitchens you've never seen, or backyards you haven't even stepped foot in, all from the comfort of pretty much anywhere. Redfin knows a lot of people like you want to own, but are stuck in this browsing mode loop. That's where Redfin flips the script. With listings that update within minutes and tours you can book right from the Redfin app, you can see your dream home the moment it appears. Now, liking a listing is easy, but actually landing it, that's where Redfin comes in. Redfin has over 2,200 agents with local expertise. And Redfin agents close twice as many deals as other agents. That means they want to help you win, not just window shop. Redfin is built to help you go from just looking to wait, this could actually be home. So become the newest neighbor on the block. Visit redfin.com to start finding and start owning. That's redfin.com.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
Sink into affordable luxury. Anabay is the only machine washable sofa, inside and out. With stain-resistant slip covers and a cloud-like frame duvet, everything goes right in the wash. Plus, the modular design lets you change the look of your space anytime. Visit WashableSofas.com to upgrade your home. Shop up to 60% off site-wide, with sofas starting at just $699 and a 30-day money-back guarantee. Shop now at WashableSofas.com. Offers are subject to change, and certain restrictions may apply.
Hello and welcome to It Could Happen Here, once again hosted by myself, Andrew, as we talk about whatever. Today we have two special guests, Sprout and Sherry Ann from the Black Flower Collective, and they're here to talk to us about the dichotomy between urban and rural political organizing. I mean, as we can all recognize in this day and age, being politically active is incredibly important. There are a lot of vulnerabilities that we are all facing under this intersection of systems, and we are looking for ways to get out. But it can be difficult to navigate, especially when you don't know exactly where to begin. That's part of the focus of my channel, and it's also something that these folks are here to talk to us about. But before we delve too deeply into the meat of that discussion, let's begin with a quick introduction. Who is Black Flower Collective? How did you all begin, and what are some of your goals as a group?
Hey, this is Sprout, and we got started organizing with the Black Flower Collective through previous organizing projects here in Aberdeen, Washington, such as the Chehalis River Mutual Aid Network. That collective got started after the Black Lives Matter rebellion in so-called Seattle, and was started by feeding the movement out there in Capitol Hill and Chaz, and then brought that organizing effort back to the community to start a Food Not Bombs here in town. Through those meetings and relationships that we formed, we got to know the local homeless in town and started getting to know their needs as we tried to fill them with our mutual aid efforts. And out of those conversations over meals, we learned that one of the biggest needs was some sort of home base where people like us trying to support the community could come together and cook meals together and serve them in a collective area.
Yeah, having a safe place to be able to just cook food and plan other types of organizations or collectives is imperative, because we face a lot of backlash from the reactionary politics around our town, being in the kind of the heart of Trump land, and the type of people that show up in the big city protests to mow people down with their trucks and whatnot.
Right. And how has that affected your outreach efforts, would you say?
Thankfully, not too harshly, but we've definitely had some scary situations. There was one time at the homeless camp we were told about by the campers there, where somebody had tried to run down a tent that somebody was sleeping in, and they managed to jump out at the before they got hit, and they jumped out of the truck and was waving a police baton or some sort of stick or something around, threatening people. Somebody got a bigger stick, which prompted them to get in their car and start pull out a pistol and start waving that around before they ended up driving off.
Yeah, sometimes when we get new volunteers, there can be a bit of hesitance from people to take food or supplies, because there's a bit of a relationship that needs forming there of trust because of those actions of right-wing actors in town. So it's kind of why are you out here feeding? So there's a bit of hesitance there. But once they realize they're with our group, we've established enough of a reputation that name drop is usually enough to reestablish that trust.
Right. Well, it's good that you'll have somewhat established yourselves, locally and built up a reputation. Would you say that has been one of your major goals as a group, to build that trust in the community? And where do y'all see that trust going from where it is now?
I've always seen that personally as our only asset. We don't have a lot of money. Obviously, we're not funded by anyone. So all we really have is our reputation in the community. And in the wider community, our reputation has led to some of that backlash that Sherry Ann was talking about. But within the actual unhoused community, we have a reputation of doing whatever we can to help people and always showing up consistently and, always being willing to go the extra mile when someone needs something in crisis.
That's fantastic. So having had some experience with, like you mentioned, working in the various movements that were happening in 2020, what would you say some of the major differences that you've noticed between organizing in major cities and in urban areas compared to rural political organizing?
Well, I'd say the majority of the issues we've noticed depend on the material conditions of the town that we're in. Being a small and rural area, there's a lot more poverty here. And so those material conditions lead to a lot of differences between urban and rural areas, I found. Before coming to the area, I was involved with Occupy Oakland back in the day. So I had a bit more of a run-in with the larger city's way of doing things.
And what about you, Sherian?
Well, I've grown up here in this town my whole life and haven't really left outside of it all too much. Um, this type of organizing is always something that I heard about more so through rumors than anything else versus actually seeing people on the ground and doing things. Once we got our Food Not Bombs chapter started during 2020, uh, it opened kind of just a new world for not just myself but a lot of people around here.
Right.
So one major difference that we've noticed that is the dichotomy of electoral politics in the town. Most of the opposition that we've faced has not been from the city, but from grassroots initiatives. And so some of those people over the course of the last 2 years have taken positions on city council. But the police that they control are still demonstrate an unwillingness to attack their own community in the way that far-right politicians would want them to.
Yeah, so take like the police that show up and like big city protests and whatnot. They'll bring in all police stations from all surrounding areas, people who aren't familiar with the community, who, you know, it's just a job to them, which helps sever their connection to that area. While here, it's the same people dealing with the same people every day, and in the minds of police, it does create like a sense of community in their mind that makes them a little more reluctant to use the type of violent force that we see in the bigger cities. And it's not to say that force isn't present and doesn't happen here, but it definitely doesn't happen on the frequency.
If I could run back a second. By the way, this is Mia. I'm also on this episode. Yeah, if I could walk back a second, ask about something. When you say that most of the resistance to what you've been doing is from grassroots movements, is that like are you talking about like sort of grassroots like right-wing political movements, or are you talking about sort of NGOs opposing you, or?
No, like we have a local grassroots right-wing initiative in town that's been the main brunt of our little group's opposition. And they have, like I said, they have run and won a few city council seats since then, but it started as a grassroots, clean up the trash sort of campaign.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could still find their page on Facebook. It's Save Our Aberdeen.
Oh, God.
Save Our Aberdeen, please. Soap. And they got like little soap bubbles and whatnot, and they're here to clean up the city streets. And oh boy, I don't think they're talking about the trash.
Not trash as we would define it.
Yeah, so sort of right. So this is a place where sort of like right wing, like anti-homeless stuff has been their sort of main way to build organization.
Yeah, it's a huge. I mean, I don't really even know, Sherian, like what other talking points do they have other than the homeless? Everything centers around the homeless. Even stuff that has to do with like businesses in town and local economics. That gets blamed on the homeless. Everything gets blamed on the homeless. So it really all goes back to that.
Yeah, they are the scapegoat for every problem that the city council faces. Or not just the city council, but businesses. You run a shitty business, it's the homeless's fault I don't have customers. It has nothing to do with the fact that I haven't sold anything in years, and this is just a hobby shop for me because I got a fat inheritance. But yeah, I'm talking about you, all that glitters.
Oh, we calling names now. So you spoke about how this this grassroots right wing movement has picked up some steam and won some seats in the city council. But one thing I recognize about grassroots movements is that they tend to have to sort of balance their goals with the trust they need to build with the broader public, with the perception that the public has of them and how they're trying to shape that perception. So how would you say that the public of Aberdeen views the right-wing initiatives, the SOAP movement, as you're referencing, And how do you think that they have tended to view Black Flower Collective?
Well, I think a lot of people feel scared to voice their opinions if they're on the left in town, but we do get a lot of support for the mutual aid that we do. The base of the right-wing movement in town is pretty strong, and I don't see them drawing in a whole lot of new people because of their extreme nature and their tendency towards conspiracies, but they do have quite a substantial base that whatever they say they're gonna agree with and they're gonna go along with.
Take for example, like here about a year or two ago, I think it was November of 2021 or August. There was a big anti-trans rally outside of a Star Wars shop here in town. That they had to bring in a bunch of Proud Boys from out of town, and like fill their numbers from outside, with outside help and whatnot, while chanting about how Antifa was coming from Seattle to burn the shop down and kill the shop owner and all this stuff. They had the guy during the whole protest. They gave him like a bulletproof vest that he's like walking around. It brought Matt Walsh to fucking town. It was a mess.
Wow. Yeah, it's really a classic example of pot meat kettle with a lot of their rhetoric, in my experience.
Yeah. I think the majority of the public, though, does care about the issues that the homeless are facing and the fallout issues from that. But it's kind of this tug back and forth between us telling them what's really going on the streets and the stories of people down at camp, and this other more right-wing tendency to just blame things on the homeless and take the simple route of saying, if we just get rid of these homeless people, then our problems will be solved. And local efforts to gentrify the area with the influx of Terry Emmert, a right-wing capitalist who's bought up like 60 properties in town recently, and as well as just the local media landscape in town has a right-wing tinge to it. I mean, where we're at, everything has a right-wing tinge to it. But so it's hard because there's not a lot of voices, even though there is a lot of sentiment of caring about the homeless, there's not a lot of voices that are actually telling the truth of what's going on the streets. And so when you get all the lies and bullshit coming from the police and city hall and just being reported verbatim by the papers in town, it leads to a lot of people forming conclusions based on faulty facts. And so they might think, oh, the homeless did this, the homeless did that. And we go into the comment sections every time and push back and say, actually, this is what happened. And it's actually a lot of times that we get people, opening their eyes and saying, oh, I didn't know that. It's not always just the standard dig your heels in sort of thing that you see on social media, because it is a sort of smaller town.
Right. Everyone kind of knows everybody.
Yeah, there's a bit more accountability in that sense. If you're going to spout off online, it's likely that all your
you kind of have to face the person in the grocery line afterwards and stuff.
Not only that, but it makes, like, for organizing in general, anonymity a lot different of a tactic in how you use it. Because, like, say in the big city, you're constantly surrounded by security cameras everywhere you go. You're constantly being monitored, watched, or whatnot. But it's a lot easier just disappear in the crowd, just another face. They're like, you can go out, spray paint, ditch, not a big deal. In a place like here in Aberdeen, for example, they're like, I could mask up and do everything I can, but if I get known in any kind of sensitive way, if I go out and spray paint a wall, it's like, oh, there goes Sherry Ann, spray painting walls again.
Yeah,
So
and once you are doxed or identified, it's really hard to undo that and just sort of re-anonymize yourself. So we've
right.
taken anonymity and our security in that aspect very seriously from the get-go. A couple people in our organization who didn't have faced, public harassment and stalking. So yeah,
Oh,
it is a
wow.
big deal.
So you've managed to maintain a level of anonymity despite your outreach efforts in a small town
Yes. Well, to a large degree.
to a large degree. Okay.
There's different people in our group. It's not like our group has rules about it. So some people use their real names, some people don't. But those who are concerned about it have been able to. Although it's difficult, and once that identification comes, it's pretty much game's up.
Right.
It also
Right.
kind of has affected our recruitment in the sense that people on the outside looking in may see what we're doing as more dangerous than it actually is because of those security concerns. And they might be scared of retaliation and not want to participate because of that. So we have taken to kind of reducing the fire in our online social medias for some of that mutual aid stuff so that we don't get as much of the backlash on those accounts. And we found that it's helpful to have ancillary groups that can go and do more autonomous stuff if we need stuff done or said that is going to create more backlash.
Right. So have sort of different layers of the organization. I remember the Afrofuturist Abolitionists of the Americas, one of the statements they had put out, they had used the term move like mycorrhizae in the sense of having sort of different levels of network in place. You have like the above ground level of, more visible public facing action, whereas you have that sort of underground fungal network of anonymous and probably more risky action taking place.
Yeah, because we have to sort of maintain a certain level of goodwill in town for certain sides of our organizing. Like the police, for example, they're always down at camp. And so having a amicable relationship with them is advantageous in certain scenarios. So yeah, splitting apart roles, I would say, one role being the public facing side of things and one role being the more private autonomous group.
And how would you say you're talking about your semi-amicable relationship with the police? How has that been sort of set up? What's the basis of that?
Well, as we were mentioning, the structure of policing is a little bit different since the police in an area small like this is going to hire locally as opposed to in large metropolis areas. You generally see police departments in big cities hiring from the suburbs surrounding the area,
Right.
which leads to sort of like a foreign occupation feel. That's definitely the feeling that I got when I was doing stuff in Oakland, was that the Oakland Police Department was not made up of anyone who lived in Oakland. They were coming from the surrounding suburbs that were much more affluent and removed from the problems of Oakland, and they were just there to occupy by force. And so we get more like the Andy Griffith feel out here, where it's like the cops are, the good guys who's helping grandma across the road and will carry your groceries up the stairs for you and that kind of stuff.
At least that's more the public perception anyway.
Right.
They also have a small tank and conduct all sorts of drug raids and stuff like that.
Right. There's that constant dichotomy. Like, yeah, we're helping you. We're walking you down the road and carrying your groceries in your house for you, but then also.
But because of the small town aspects of it, though, being able to like play on their wanting, for the ones who do want to help but are misguided because they're cops, ACAB. But for the ones who are trying to help, who aren't like specifically going out trying to fuck over homeless people besides their jobs, ones who occasionally like go out and buy stuff of their own money or whatever to like help so or whatever, they'll kind of like rely on us to deal with that side of the population, so they don't have to waste their time dealing with the homeless. Which allows us to deal with more of the problems in the homeless community in-house versus having to get the police involved.
Right, because the police aren't really trained or capable of resolving those kind of issues.
For example, like my father, for example, he was in and out of prison his whole life, and after I was born and he got out of prison that last time, he had a moment where he's going to get ready to have a relapse, right? He went to his dealer's house, he's there, he bought his 8-ball, he's sitting there, getting ready to do his thing, and there's a knock at the door. And they open it up, and it's police. They got a warrant for the dealer. They're raiding the house. And this one cop, pulls my dad aside because he knows if the other cop sees him, he's going to send him straight to prison. And he's like, hey, what are you doing here, man? And whatever possessed my dad to do it, he's like, I just want to go home. He put the 8-ball in that dude's hand, and cops kind of looked at him and was like, just get the fuck out of here. Just go. Because he knew if the other cop, saw him, he would have sent him to prison right then. And again, a cab, this is, the best story you're ever going to hear.
It's the best story of a cop is a cop not being a cop, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly.
Every time.
But you definitely get more of that here, though, that they're advantage to take over.
Yeah, and we have a certain people in our group that can liaison better than others with the police, and so we've used that to our advantage as well. They've largely ignored, I want to say the police, not the city. The city wants to stop us. It's like their undying wish, apparently. But the police have largely ignored or shown tacit support for our efforts because they're members of the community, and they, at least the older crop of officers, have been working these streets and seeing the same homeless individuals for, in some cases, longer than I've been alive. So, there are relationships there, even if it's one mediated by that position of being a police officer. When you see someone struggling for that long, it's hard not to be empathetic as a human. And so we've been seeing a bit of a shift now that all those officers are starting to retire, and we're getting a new crop of younger, more gung-ho police, because who would sign up to be a police officer in 2023, other than people who have something going on with them. So we're seeing very distinct
politics for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But for a while there, it was this, that sort of old crop of police officers who had built relationships in the community and had that public image of being the helpful peace officer, as it were, which makes it hard to push back when you're a group that's trying to advance, abolitionist thinking and anti-cop sentiments. When they are beating people with batons, it's easy for your community to look at that and be like, okay, these guys are clearly the enemy. But when they're just, helping grandma across the street, it's a lot harder to make those arguments. So that's been one aspect that has made things difficult for us.
And another dichotomy in the list of these in the mirror differences between the conditions around organizing in small town rural area versus big urban cities such as, say, Seattle.
Yeah, but despite all of their helpful nature, they are enforcing local ordinances that criminalize the unhoused, despite the ruling out of the Ninth Circuit Court of Martin v. Boise that says it's unconstitutional to do so. So even with no alternative shelter available this year, we have 0 cold weather shelters in Aberdeen. They're still out there sweeping people and telling them, hey, you got to move along, when the maps handed out by the city say specifically you can sleep here and you can camp here as long as you leave enough space for pedestrians to get by. You can set up on the sidewalks, and yet they move them along every day.
Yeah. as you're talking about, the different dichotomies that you face between urban and rural political organizing, I would imagine that population is certainly an issue that you might have to face as, an organization trying to make a change in a small space. Have you found it challenging to build your base and, get connections and stuff going?
Yeah, for certain. Like, as we said, there's already the issues with of us having a more reactionary based politics in a lot of our population, and that's scaring what allies that we do have here. So it's definitely resulted in us having to do the best we can to network outside as much as possible.
Yeah, there's not a really wide base of radicals to pull from, so we have to work with a bit wider ranging group of folks out here. Although it has always shocked me how many people are willing to get involved in radical organizing here in town. I think the smaller group size has led to a need for more connection and more listening in our decision-making processes, which has been nice. I think we've gotten really good at operating as a small, tight-knit group, which maybe organizers in larger areas where groups are larger have to deal with a little bit differently. There's also the difference in terms of where we socialize. In places like Aberdeen, there's nothing to do in terms of social gatherings. There's no center of socialization in town. The only thing that we did have was the mall, which has been closed for a couple of years now. So there's not a lot to do in terms of activities. And there's also just not a lot of space, like physical space in which to gather as a community. That's why we are currently serving our food not bomb meals under a bridge, because the city has removed all covered areas in one of the most rainy areas in the country.
Yeah, like when I go to like Seattle, for example, I could walk into any business, any doorway, just about any street pole, and see flyer after flyer after flyer for this event, this concert, this group's doing this, these classes are taking place, etc. They straight up have a law against putting anything on the poles in town, versus let alone there actually being any events happening worth using the poles in the first place.
Right. So I would imagine that part of your aims as a collective would be to find ways to bring the community together through those sorts of social events, informal and formal.
For sure. And that's definitely a big part of our goal with the Black Flower Project, is to create a sort of social center, a place for the community to come for various reasons and, experience whatever they might discover.
So it sounds like you'll have a good lay of the land in terms of what is happening in the town and what sort of movements you want to be making. In the next part of this episode, you can join myself and Mia and Sherry-Ann and Sprout as we discuss the actions that Black Flower Collective plans on taking in their community and what sort of material conditions they've continued to have to navigate in this space. Until then, I'm Andrew of the YouTube channel Andrewism. You can follow me on Twitter at _SaintDrew and support on patreon.com/SaintDrew. And you could also check out Black Flower Collective and support their work.
Yeah, you can find us at linktree/Blackflower LLC or blackflowercollective.noblogs.org.
You can also find our content at linktree/AL1312, where you can find our podcast, Molotov Now, and a bunch of our other projects by Sabo Media.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Let's talk about modern home shopping. It's sort of become a fun side hobby, right? Scrolling listings at night, dreaming about kitchens you've never seen, or backyards you haven't even stepped foot in, all from the comfort of pretty much anywhere. Redfin knows a lot of people like you want to own, but are stuck in this browsing mode loop. That's where Redfin flips the script. With listings that update within minutes and tours you can book right from the Redfin app, you can see your dream home the moment it appears. Now, liking a listing is easy, but actually landing it, that's where Redfin comes in. Redfin has over 2,200 agents with local expertise. And Redfin agents close twice as many deals as other agents. That means they want to help you win, not just window shop. Redfin is built to help you go from just looking to wait, this could actually be home. So become the newest neighbor on the block. Visit redfin.com to start finding and start owning. That's redfin.com.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
Time for a sofa upgrade? Introducing Anabay Sofas, where designer style meets budget-friendly prices. Anabay brings you the ultimate in furniture innovation with a modular design that allows you to rearrange your space effortlessly. Perfect for both small and large spaces, Anabay is the only machine-washable sofa inside and out. Say goodbye to stains and messes with liquid and stain-resistant fabrics that make cleaning easy. Liquids simply slide right off. Designed for custom comfort, our high-resilience foam lets you choose between a sink-in feel or a supportive memory foam blend. Plus, our pet-friendly, stain-resistant fabrics ensure your sofa stays beautiful for years. Don't compromise quality for price. Visit washablesofas.com to upgrade your living space today. Sofas start at just $699 with no risk returns and a 30-day money-back guarantee. Get up to 60% off, plus free shipping and free returns. Shop now at washablesofas.com. Offers are subject to change and certain restrictions may apply.
Hello and welcome to It Could Happen Here. Joining me again for this second part of a two-parter are Sherry-Ann and Sprout from the Black Flower Collective in Aberdeen, Washington, as they've joined us to discuss the dichotomy between urban and rural political organizing. Last we spoke, they gave us some background on exactly how the Black Flower Collective began and what sort of motivating factors there have been in their development as an organization, as well as some of the dichotomies that they've experienced between urban and rural political organizing. Now we're going to take a moment to explore some of the other material conditions that they have faced in their city, or rather in their small town. Sherry-Ann?
As we were talking about in the last episode, there's a huge difference between the modes of socialization in big cities and then versus small towns like our own. You know, here we socialize more like in our houses. You meet friends at the homes of other friends' houses, where in the bigger cities, it's more so that you went to a club, you went to an event, concert, class, what have you, and these are definitely things that have like evolved and developed based on the just different material conditions. There's not as many classes around here in events and stuff like that because A, people just don't have the money to go to them, and B, there's nobody has the money to really put them on, or any of that's startup capital. There's not enough money coming through the town. It's why the far right are always trying to push this homeless narrative, because they're trying to make turn this town into like a tourist town or something, which makes no goddamn sense to me. There's nothing in this town to come here for.
Yes.
But like the only reason you're coming to this town is because you're driving through here to go to the ocean. That's it. Like the highway dumps out here, and then it's old highways back to the rest of the ocean.
Sounds pretty isolated.
It can be pretty isolating out here, but it doesn't disconnect us from the overall struggle. Throughout our organizing, we've discovered that there's a lot of things that we can do for urban comrades through our mutual aid. For example, rural people can do anything that is virtual, such as graphic design or web support. We can also offer up rural spaces for rest and recuperation for frontline activists in urban areas. While we may not be present in the heat of battle, we can make our isolation a strength, as often people abused directly by the system require peace and solitude to recover from such trauma.
That makes sense.
We can also use our local networks to identify enemies and report this to the wider radical community. Out here, there is a huge number of, out here and in the Pacific Northwest in general, there's a huge number of white supremacist and neo-Nazi militias and organizations. And so they generally organize in small towns like Aberdeen. You see a lot of that here. And so people living in those towns bear the responsibility, we think, of reporting on the activities of those groups to the wider community. Because a lot of times what you see is, it's kind of like the police coming in from the suburbs. The extremists often come in from the outlying rural areas, either in protest scenarios or, usually in protest scenarios. We saw a couple instances in which our local right-wing neo-Nazi group went out to Chaz and was filming videos out there and collecting information for their organizing back here. So we can also be doing the same throughout the interim and collecting information on those groups for our comrades in urban areas.
Right. That sounds like some really viable and potent ways to build that sense of urban-rural solidarity.
Yeah, because there's definitely a lot of people out here that need some notes taken on them. For example, during the height of the 2020 protests, there was a small solidarity protest that was essentially just 5 women that holding a couple signs, and which resulted in a line of reactionaries and their assault rifles, the harassing and threatening this very small group of women. It's saying how Antifa was coming to the town and they were going to burn the town down and all this stuff. You got people like in Walla Walla, for example. You have Henry Contreras, who utilizes what connections and whatnot that he has out there to like call other white supremacists around the nation and essentially be like, hey, move here, we'll get you a job, we'll get you a house, we'll get you all set up, just come here and organize with us. And we kind of have our own version of that here in Aberdeen with Cash McCullum, the leader of the Pacific Northwest Wolf Pack, our local neo-Nazi group. And people like that, I think, it's not just them. It's a whole group that they're a whole social setting that follows them. And us being in rural communities are going to have the best opportunity to keep tabs on that kind of stuff and warn the wider community.
Right.
Yeah.
That's absolutely vital. And, one of my questions that I'd prepared in coming to meet with you all, I was going to ask actually, how can we avoid this sort of idea that a lot of people have in their heads, all radicals have in their heads, the distant commune trap, this idea that, radicals, they move out to the country, they set up their happy little commune, it either falls apart, turns into a cult, or just like pulls away from the broader struggle. But it seems like in some ways, y'all have been able to utilize that distance as a sort of a strength. And you've spoken quite a bit about how rural communities, different ways they've been able to help urban communities in the broader struggle. But now I just want to turn the tables a bit and ask what sort of ways urban radicals can support the struggles within rural communities.
Well, one way that we've seen a lot of solidarity from urban comrades has been in the topic of harm reduction. It's really hard to access services out here where we're at. There's really only one player in town, and they are highly bureaucratic, and the line to get any sort of social service from them is a mile long. So
also, fun note, that Cash McCollum person I talked about earlier is on the board for that social service as well, as well as other people who are part of the SOAP group.
Yeah. So we've seen a large show of solidarity from urban comrades sending us harm reduction supplies such as Narcan, which has literally saved dozens of lives since we started that program. Healthcare in general is a tough issue for rural areas. Transportation distances, lack of providers, lack of services, all of those things compound to make it really difficult to get appropriate healthcare. And so anytime anyone has any actual injury in town, they just send them to Seattle anyway. Our hospitals out here are really terrible. And so training, I think, would be a really vital need that we could benefit from a lot out here. If we could get these sort of medical collectives and the harm reduction collectives that exist in these more urban areas to conduct rural training workshops, I think that would be a huge benefit to not only just Aberdeen, but any rural area that was to take place in, because that would allow those communities to start employing harm reduction and general first aid in their communities and prevent transportation out to these more metro areas.
Yeah, the more we could do skill shares, the more we could do workshops, the more we could do radical classes or anything under the idea of kind of unschooling that we could do for rural communities is imperative, because outside of high school, unless you're going to college for something specific, there's just not much for learning out here.
What about the next generation? What about that site of struggle in education?
Well, I believe Sprout could probably delve into this a bit more, but I definitely would say that our ideas for education is in the next generation, as much as everything, kind of goes under this. I forget the name of it, but it's this idea of the 7 years generation in our planning, and the what would this look like for the next 7 generations.
Right, 7 generations sustainability, or 7 generation stewardship is another term used.
I think education is central to a community. It's really the same sort of, you're going to get the same answer with all of these: healthcare, addiction, poverty. They're all interrelated out here. And because education is so crucial, we have focused the Black Flower Collective's initiatives on a lot of educational programs. So we're trying to get this space set up so that we can start having some revolutionary coursework that we can offer there. We would really like to develop it into a real campus for learning, both for youth programs and for continuing education, GED and college level kind of stuff. We think that the unschooling method is pretty cool, where people can kind of just pace their own learning and decide what it is they want to learn. So that's the method that we would go with. And we think that allows for a lot more diversity in the styles of learning that are employed. And through that, you can kind of learn new ways of learning, I guess, which helps add resilience to any community. And I think that a lot of those skills offered at a place like that, like Sherry was saying, skill shares, I think a lot of that will need to come from urban communities. because we don't have a lot of that out here of our own.
Right.
So hopefully,
Right.
when we get our space set up, we can host all manner of gatherings and start bridging that divide between the rural and the urban.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been learning more about your space. Did a bit of research on it. Prior to the episode when we first started talking. Very inspiring stuff. Very much in the vein of something that I plan on doing locally here in Trinidad and Tobago. Let's pretend that this is a revolutionary version of Shark Tank. All right, like let's just pretend this is an anarchist Shark Tank. Give me your elevator pitch for this space. Like, what is the plan there?
Okay, our plan is twofold. The property would be divided into two separate sections. The public-facing section would be dedicated to the social center we've been speaking of, and the rest of the property would be what we're calling an eco-village, where residents would live. The social center will be where we centralize community resources, and the self-governed eco-village would have immediate access to those shared resources. The plan is to run the social center as a bit of a small business incubator for various community initiatives that we've been talking about, and as well for the residents of the eco-village to start their own small personal businesses. Because in our discussions with people on the streets, everyone has an idea of how to make money, and it's just always some small barrier like paperwork or permits that gets in the way of them starting to have their own income and that sense of independence. So we want to be able to help with that. It would also obviously be a central hub for preparing and serving food, which has been the basis of all of our organizing so far, is the coming together and sharing of meals. We want to have an internet cafeteria and a community kitchen there. We would also hold space for the mutual aid network to store supplies and conduct its work both on and off site. We want to have enough space to have a meeting hall for potential unions and start pushing on the unionization locally with the IWW. All of these spaces would be rentable to the public. So the union hall, for example, would be a great venue for an event that someone wanted to throw, or perhaps a wedding even. And so that could be one source of revenue for the social center, as well as the back-end bookkeeping services that we're going to have as part of the business incubator, and the permaculture design services that we're going to have as part of the eco-village.
It really sounds like a lot of the different ideas that I've had converging on my channel for some time now. This idea of a sort of a library economy, this idea of the eco-villages, the sort of permaculture spaces and modes and centers of community outreach and education.
I'd be lying if I didn't say that we're a huge fan of your channel, actually.
Appreciate that. And I'm honestly, in turn, this project is something that really inspires me as well. And,
I'd like to say that none of this is from us. We've taken so much inspiration from other projects to cobble together this plan that, it's been a real joy to just go through all of everyone else's different content and kind of see like, oh, this could fit with that and this could fit with that, and come up with a plan that we really think could start to solve some of these issues that we're seeing in town.
Right. I think that's one of the few beauties of the internet these days, the fact that it's still able to connect people and ideas from all over the place.
Yeah, for sure.
I wanted to ask, as you mentioned, these sort of eco-villages and that whole idea, having spaces for housing and benefiting the people in that community, developing that sort of sense of interdependence. I wanted to, you can't really talk about urban and rural and urban without bringing up the fact that urbanization, seems to ever crawl into the rural space. Like there's always this sense of the encroachment of the city on the surrounding rural regions. What is your take on that?
Yeah, it does seem to be a one-way street. I think the model that we're trying to push is one of degrowth, where you would see sort of a reversal of that trend of gentrification or urbanization, and you would see more of like a ruralizing of urban spaces to start having more green spaces, more growing of their own food, and more production of agricultural products right there in the urban centers.
Right.
You know, which is kind of what we want to do with the eco village, is provide a bit of a model for how community organizing of how a community could organize itself around ecological principles.
Prefigurative politics in action.
Exactly.
Another note that I guess I want to bring up before we start to come to the close is, again, we've been speaking a lot about the urban and the rural, but one element, except in sort of a passing sense of our discussion of the police, one element that's kind of been lost in that, and that I know people might be asking about, is what about the suburbs? Like, do you see a space for organizing there? Where does that fit into that urban-rural dichotomy? What sort of focuses do you think suburban organizers might want to tackle?
Well, I think suburban comrades are probably going to have a bit of both worlds, as it were, because they're not in the downtown core of a city where most protests or sites of struggle happen, but they're also not out in the boonies in a rural environment. So, they might have police that are a bit more preoccupied with the actual community and actually from the community. And so they might need to take some lessons from the rural centers or from the rural areas in that regard, and try to diversify their group into multiple different roles, multiple different channels, so that they aren't having continuous backlash against a group that's just trying to feed the homeless. But at the same time, they have a lot of resources that rural people don't have access to. And so they could be coming into rural areas and providing those same sort of trainings and workshops that urban comrades could. And they could also be going into urban centers and learning and providing workshops and skill shares in those scenarios. I think they're kind of maybe play a bit of a buffer zone between the two.
So what does the future look like for Black Flower Collective? What projects are you planning on tackling in the here and now, a couple months from now, a few years down the line? And how can folks support?
Well, right now we are definitely focused on securing funding. The housing market is horrible. Property prices are going up, and when there is a good deal on something, it's gone usually within a day, within hours. So we are definitely full focus on fundraising right now. We need to have the money on hand to be able to jump on a piece of property when it comes up, because we need a good deal and we need a good amount of land to make sure that we have the room to grow and build various projects in the future.
So the projects that we're focusing on right now immediately is the permaculture design services. And so if anyone wants to have us design their farm or garden or house or balcony, they can go to blackflowerpermaculture.noblogs.org and get started through that process there. Hopefully, once we get land, as you were saying, in the next 5 years, the permaculture design services can grow into a permaculture design course that we could actually start offering people to come and do like a 2-week intensive study on the building techniques that we're using on site in the eco village and on how to apply those back at home. Another project that we're currently working on is the bookkeeping. This is sort of the bedrock of the business admin side of things that we're going to be folding into the business incubator once we get that going. And we are looking into a couple different grants for that. But as Sherry-Ann said, right now we're focused on fundraising. So we do have a couple different platforms that we're collecting donations from, and we are starting to plan a few benefit shows here locally in Aberdeen. So if anyone is in a band and wants to roll through and play a show for us, that would be much appreciated. They can just get a hold of us through our website.
So our role in Black Flower is trying to spread awareness, help with this fundraising, give them kind of free advertisement in order to help their growth. Me and Sprout and our podcast Molotov Now are from the Sabo Media Collective, which once things are going good with Black Flower, we're hoping to be housed by them to help grow our media efforts. But if another good way to help in supporting Black Flower is to go to our website at Sabo, SABOT media .noblogs.org and share our podcast Molotov Now. Check us out on social media, on whatever social media you are on, from Collectiva, Mastodon to Facebook at Aberdeen Local 1312. We have articles that we write on the Harbor Rat Report and a whole host of other content for people to check out and share, with donation links that all go to Black Flower's efforts.
That's fantastic. And I would encourage folks to check out what they're doing on all these different platforms. And well, that's been it for It Could Happen Here. It's been great to have you both from Black Flower Collective. I've been your host for today, Andrew, of the YouTube channel Andrewism, which you can follow youtube.com/Andrewism, on Twitter at _Saint Drew, and on patreon.com/Saint Drew. All power to all the people. Glad to have you all.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being on.
Thank you, guys. It's great recording with you.
Let's talk about modern home shopping. It's sort of become a fun side hobby, right? Scrolling listings at night, dreaming about kitchens you've never seen, or backyards you haven't even stepped foot in, all from the comfort of pretty much anywhere. Redfin knows a lot of people like you want to own, but are stuck in this browsing mode loop. That's where Redfin flips the script. With listings that update within minutes and tours you can book right from the Redfin app, you can see your dream home the moment it appears. Now, liking a listing is easy, but actually landing it, that's where Redfin comes in. Redfin has over 2,200 agents with local expertise. And Redfin agents close twice as many deals as other agents. That means they want to help you win, not just window shop. Redfin is built to help you go from just looking to wait, this could actually be home. So become the newest neighbor on the block. Visit redfin.com to start finding and start owning. That's redfin.com.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
Kids, pets, life, your sofa sees it all. But with a washable sofa, stains don't stand a chance. All of our sofa collections come with fully machine washable covers and cushions, making cleanup effortless. Liquid and stain-resistant fabrics provide extra protection against everyday messes. Plus, with modular designs, you can rearrange your sofa however you like. Perfect for growing families and changing spaces. Starting at just $699, it's time to upgrade to a stress-free, mess-proof sofa. Visit washablesofas.com today and save. Offers are subject to change, and certain restrictions may apply.
That's my getting absolutely screwed over by the medical establishment voice. Woo!
People thought it was another sheep podcast. They were briefly extremely excited.
Nope. The sheep podcast will. I make no promises about the sheep podcast.
Were we going to tell them about the lost sheep episode?
No.
No. Okay. We'll just leave that one.
Yeah. This is It Could Happen Here, the podcast where you would think that the medical issue is a trans thing, and it's absolutely not, and it's amazing, and I love it. It's a podcast where I complain about medical issues and talk about other stuff. With me is James.
Yeah, I'm a person who complains about medical issues and sometimes goes to Mexico to buy drugs. So.
Yay!
But legal drugs, medical drugs, while we're being recorded.
The thing this is making me think of is I was in. Oh God, I don't remember where in Mexico I was. I was not very old, but so we took a ferry, and I got like so seasick. It was like the most seasick I've ever been. So we had to like go back, and my Spanish is not great. At this time, my Spanish was much worse than it is now. And we go to this drugstore, and we're trying to find something that's like an anti-seasickness drug, and we buy this drug called Vomicin. And we're looking through the thing. We find the part where it says side effects, and I remember, and I look at this, and I read it, and it says hallucinaciones, and I'm like, oh no! And I was like, oh God! And it wound up actually, it was completely fine. Yeah, I did not vomit over the rails again. On the ferry ride back.
I have a good inadvertent medicine hallucinogen story, and then we can actually do the podcast. When I was a bit younger, I was climbing a mountain in Morocco, and became like extremely altitude sick. Like my fucking nose was just like unleashing my blood. Like it was a real moment. I better look great. And so I tried to get some medicine. We went somewhere, and like, you know, I speak French, but most of the people spoke Berber, and it wasn't a language that I speak at all. Anyway, I received some medicine, which I took in the form of, I think, like a powder that I mixed with honey. And I was like, okay, this is unique and different, whatever. Fuck me, did I have some incredible dreams. I just kept taking it because I was saying, well, it was definitely opium. Was the thing I was taking was like, I bought it down and was like, this stuff just really helps out my altitude sickness. One of the adults I was with was like,
Oh.
Yeah, don't do drugs, kids.
Speaking of not doing drugs, okay, so we are here today to talk about democracy,
the opium of the masses.
Yeah. So this script was originally written in a period where I had spent an enormous amount of time being forced to watch documentaries about what democracy was. And my conclusion from all of this is that the history of democracy begins with a mistranslation.
Okay.
So, okay, what does that mean? The answer is that, okay, whenever someone starts talking about democracy, the first thing they do is they go like, I'm gonna start by translating the word democracy. The most common translation, you'll see this like everywhere, from like Astra Taylor's like documentary "What is Democracy" to just like the thing that's on Wikipedia, holds that democracy is derived from two Greek words, right? You have demos, meaning the people, and kratos, meaning rule. So you put these two together, you get demos, kratos, you get democracy. I can't pronounce Greek very well. It's fine, whatever. This is ancient Greek. Yeah, but you know, this means rule by the people. So, okay, this translation has several advantages, right? Foremost among them, it is simple enough to be taught to school children, and catchy enough that there's a non-zero chance that like the most pedantic of them will remember it after like the day after the test, which presumably is the explanation for why this is the translation of democracy. It opens every single fucking thing people write about democracy. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately for our beleaguered grade school teachers and sort of the broader populace as a whole, this translation is so blatantly wrong that I have been forced to start a thing about democracy and also about rioting, yelling about ancient Greek. So
great.
Okay, so what is the actual issue here? The actual problem is the mistranslation of Kratos in particular is incredibly important both conceptually and ideologically. And the actual sort of proper translation and the implications of this are worth examining in some detail. So, the anthropologist David Graeber, who we have mentioned a lot on this show, wrote in his regrettably very poorly read essay, There Never Was a West, he describes Kratos thus, quote, This in turn might help explain the term democracy itself, which appears to have been coined as something of a slur by its elitist opponents. It literally means the force, or even violence, of the people. Kratos, not Archos, the ancient Greek word for ruler, also the root of anarchism, or without Archos.
Yeah.
So what he's saying there...
Wasn't Kratos a dude? Like he's a dude. I've undersold him. An immortal dude.
Yeah, he's the main character of the God of War games.
Okay, that is the thing I did not know.
And hilariously, that is like him being the main character of the God of War games. That is actually a better way to understand what Kratos is than the rule by thing that everyone usually translates this at, because like ancient Greek has a perfectly good word for like rule by, right? It's Archos. It's the root of anarchism. It's like an anarchos. It's a word. It's like the normal thing where you have a Greek derived word where you want to say rule by is Archos, right?
Yeah.
But like democracy is not that, right? Yeah, like oligarchy is like that. But like democracy is specifically Kratos. And this is because what democracy literally means is rule by the violence of the people.
Based.
Yeah, well, and this, okay, so like this sounds like I am essentially pearl clutching about translations, but the context here is actually important, right? As Graeber points out, the sort of, Athens, which is the exemplar society against which the original anti-democratic philosophers rail. By the way, this is like Plato, et cetera, hates democracy. Most of the people who you read from sort of classical Greek, like, philosophy despise democracy even though they live in them. Huge, not to like whitewash Athenian society, but like these people are like Sparta apologists, and it's like
we haven't really. It's funny, like people have definitely. I don't know if they've actually recovered Plato or read Plato, or they just get mad when Donald Trump doesn't win elections. But like this whole like benevolent philosopher king shit has definitely made a comeback in recent years, and it's troubling.
Yeah, and I think part of this is another complaint that I've had about sort of like the way that like the sort of like great authors thing is taught in universities is they deliberately like there was like in what specific readings they assigned, there was like an incredible intellectual effort that goes into making sure you never see the absolutely deranged shit that these people believe. Like Plato literally worships angular momentum. Like that is his god is angular momentum. Like he hates democracy. He loves like Spartan like oligarchy, basically. Like all of this stuff is like that's like stuff that like you don't read when you get assigned Plato. It's like
there's a huge like as someone who's taught like a ton of universities, there's this huge fucking impediment to you assigning that stuff. Like I've specifically tried to assign different stuff in these like writing courses, which end up being like great white dudes of history, right? Like that like if you can assign different things, but like the cost of assigning those, and that cost isn't borne by you or the university, right? It's borne by your students. It is massive. Like even if like for a while there, like we would just write like a lot of text, if you take the time as a professor to label out the text, you can take it to a print shop, get them to photocopy it. and almost inevitably, you need to find someone who's willing to kind of play fast and loose with copyright. But still, it will end up costing your students so much more than the texts which are in the book that you can fucking auto-generate the quizzes because the book also has a website and you still get paid like you're doing a job when you're not. So yeah.
Yeah,
and bad.
Yeah, and this stuff has had, like this has had sort of profound ideological influences. It's had, it's had sort of profound influences on like just sort of the way that like ancient Greece and Rome are like conceptualized. And I think this also really has it makes it very hard to see what was sort of actually going on in a place like Athens. And, Graeber sort of points this out, right? Like Athens is a sort of like exemplar, it's a sort of exemplar, like it is literally like the place for which like most descriptions of sort of democracy are sort of originally about. And Athens, we are trained to think of Athens as like, oh, it's like, well, Athens, this is like the first democracy or whatever. This is actually like a very normal sort of society, and it's not. This is an extremely weird society. Yeah. And what Graeber sort of points out about this, right, is, the thing that is, okay, so like there have been lots of societies over sort of the course of human, like hundreds of thousands of years of the sort of like course of human history, right, that have had collaborative decision making systems. What is very, very weird and almost unique about Athens is it has two things put together. It has a decision-making apparatus where people have equal say, and it also has a violent enforcement mechanism to impose the will of the people on other people. And as we'll get to in a second, also impose the will of those people on other people. Most society, yeah, that turns out to be a very important part of sort of the Athenian Empire, et cetera, et cetera.
And like who the people are.
Yeah,
this is not all the people.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second too.
Nice.
But so most societies, Graeber argues, either have one or the other of, having like a decision-making apparatus for people of equal say and a violent enforcement mechanism, right? You have a lot of societies with collective decision-making apparatuses that involve the entire community. But the thing is, these processes invariably sort of like develop some kind of consensus process as a sort of expedient to keep the community from just tearing itself apart through constant conflict, right? Because like, okay, if you can't actually, without the threat of force, right, you can't actually have a society where you constantly have really, really controversial decisions being made by like 51-49 splits where both sides absolutely hate each other and one side is imposed over the other, right? In order to sort of like keep your like, your like city or your state together, right, you have to actually create political solutions that people not that they necessarily like fully agree with, but that they're willing to live with. And this generates sort of like various, so increasingly elaborate, sometimes not very elaborate, but various sort of forms of consensus processes. On the other hand, you have societies with extremely violent enforcement mechanisms, but these societies are almost always incredibly hierarchical, and they're ruled either by sort of monarchs or oligarchs who just simply do not care about the notion that like people should rule themselves, or that other people who are not like the king or the body of oligarchs should have like anything even remotely to do with making decisions. And that's what makes Athens really weird, right? Is that Athens has both of these things. It has a way of like imposing decisions on people through violence, and also it has this principle that like people should be able to make decisions for themselves collectively by, like through a sort of process that doesn't involve them all being ruled by just like some guy. And what makes Athens and the other sort of Greek democracies, because there are other democracies in Greece over the sort of period that this goes on. What makes them unique is that like the people, quote unquote, is composed largely of soldiers, as Graeber puts it. In other words, if a man is armed, then one pretty much has to take his opinion into account. One can see how this works in its starkest in Xenophon's Anabasis. I have now been told by several dictionary sites that this is in fact how you pronounce it. I don't know. Anabasis sounds terrible to me, but such is the will of I don't know, dictionaries. which tells the story of a Greek army of mercenaries who suddenly find themselves leaderless and lost in the middle of Persia. They elect new officers and then hold a collective vote to decide what to do next. In a case like this, even if the vote was actually 60-40, everyone could see the balance of forces and what would happen if things actually came to blows. Every vote was, in a real sense, a conquest. So what we're dealing with here, right? This is sort of what democracy is in its very rawest form. Is you are dealing with a group of very heavily armed men who need to find a way to convince slightly more than half of the group to agree to help them impose their rule on everyone else. Do you know what will get you? Do you know who will fail to pay your mercenary contract, leaving you stranded in the middle of a Persian civil war, which you have backed the wrong side?
Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, don't take mercenary contracts on Vladimir Putin. And we're back. So, as I was sort of saying, like what we're dealing with here, right? We have a group of very heavily armed men, and they need to find a way to make like half of, like slightly more than half of the group agree with them to impose their sort of rule on everyone else. So in slightly more technical terms, right? Athenian democracy or democracy in the Athenian sense is composed of two co-determining elements fused together. There is a decision-making apparatus and an enforcement mechanism. The two are co-determining because the structure of the enforcement mechanism, which is 51 blokes with sticks beating 49 blokes with sticks over the head, also determines the structure of the decision-making apparatus, which no longer needs to concern itself with the opinion of everyone in the group as they would in a society without the ability to sort of employ violence to enforce decisions, as long as they have enough people to sort of militarily defeat a minority of the group. Right, and you could see how the structure, how the enforcement mechanism is the thing that is structuring what the decision making process has to look like. Right, it's the thing that sort of sets its limits, and this is something that it turns out is very, very sort of important in what a democracy is. The enforcement mechanism too is also determined by the sort of decision making apparatus because the people here are armed soldiers. So the 51% that becomes the sort of like basis of democratic majority rule, it literally composes the enforcement mechanism itself. And this sort of double co-determination is the origin of majority rule democracy, right? The institution that, in various forms, and we will get into this, like this has gotten increasingly less and less quote unquote democratic over time. But this specific form is the thing that has come to sort of define what democracy is. If we look at what democracy is as a political project, though, right, what we see is that the essence of democracy itself is to transform the majority from a simple count of military strength into a signal of morality, right? The citizens of democracies, and even a lot of people who are either not citizens of a democracy and live in it, or who don't live in a democracy, simply believe that it is the moral right for a majority of people to be able to impose their will on a minority. This is what forms a kind of democratic common sense, right? It is the thing that everyone believes that is sort of the basis of everything about how a democracy functions, right? And democracy is almost never framed this way explicitly, except by every once in a while you'll get someone who makes this argument who is like, I don't know, they're a billionaire, or they're like, what's his name? Hayek will like if you press him, or like Milton Friedman if you pressed him, will make this argument, right? Which is like, no one actually wants to live in a democracy because, like if we actually live in a democracy, everyone will just like increase our tax rate, or like marginalized groups will like.
These are critiques made of the United States as well, and it's like earliest inception, right?
Yeah, what's his name? I think it was John Adams. So some of the early founders, like very explicitly, this was their argument against, like, made very explicit anti-democratic arguments against giving anyone who didn't have property the vote, which was like, I think the exact line was, if you give people the vote, the first thing they will do is erase the debts and redistribute the land.
Yeah, there was a whole ass rebellion about this, right?
I wish it would have been based. Good program, usually kind of messed up in the U.S. where you have to ask where that land comes from. Yeah. But Yeah, but like you, this is an argument you really only ever hear from people who have the only minority that makes this argument are people who have a shit ton of property who are like, oh God. And, you know, and their thing here is, well, okay, we need to make the system less democratic so that people can't take our property away.
Yeah, or give property rights.
Yeah, but on the other hand, their reason for sort of pointing out that this is what democracy is in theory is really sort of cynical and like reactionary. But the thing that the reason this argument works, well, quote unquote works with sort of like, you know, with sort of libertarians is that this equation of sort of numerical superiority with the moral right to exercise power is like the key underlying assumption of democracy. It is the idea without which democracy simply ceases to function, right? But this is something that, you know, people don't talk about democracy like this, right? The sort of trick of the democratic system is to push the enforcement mechanism into the background, right? When you talk about democracy with like regular people, the thing that normally they think about voting, right? But you know, any kind of thing that is like a collective like decision making process, right? A regular person is going to call democracy, and you know, if that's kind of true, but you know, if you want to sort of get like technical about it, it's not. And there's an incredibly large ideological apparatus that's specifically built up around making sure that people don't look at the way that the enforcement mechanism is as much, if not more so, a sort of key element of what democracy is than the part where everyone comes together and makes a decision that everyone talks about all the time.
I was watching an interview with Graeber the other day. Such are the things I do in my free time, and he was talking about like democratic confederalism in northeast Syria, right? And he talked about it as like democracy without the state, which I think is interesting. Like it's him using that vernacular kind of definition.
So okay, so like I'm taking a lot of the arguments some stuff Graeber wrote, but he backs away from the implications of his own argument.
Right, yeah, so, and goes back to, albeit like caveating. And I guess it's worth noting that there are a ton of like hugely divergent, like we're not like prisoners of etymology, right? The meaning, like I think it's Rosa Luxemburg who said government is politics in the people's interest or something. It's kind of bullshit tanky interpretation of what most people would see it as. There are these broad definitions,
you know, and I think this is something that like Asher Taylor's documentary, right? Like, you know, the part about that's good, right? Is like, you know, there's I forget who says this, but there's this like kind of famous political line that's like, if there is a thing that everyone agrees is good, no one will agree on what it is. Right, like you know, and this is something that, like, you know, like I think it speaks to the power. I think it speaks specifically to the power of the sort of like the idea that more people be like agreeing with something, like gives legitimacy to that thing, which is that like every like even societies that are like not even like really remotely democratic, right, will pretend that they're still democracies, right? Like the Baathists have elections every sort of like cycle,
like
right? Like. Yeah, I mean, like you know, this is the thing I think isn't very well understood, but like this was also a thing. Like, for example, China has this like. Okay. Sorry, I as I'm preparing to explain this, I'm realizing that the Chinese government experts are going to get mad at me because I think I'm about to confuse the United Front with the United Front Works Department. But so China, like technically speaking, is. There are like other parties technically that are kind of remnants from like, you know, for example, like the left faction of the KMT, which is like the Chinese Nationalist Party, right? There's like technically a faction of them that's part of this thing called like the United Front. There's like technically other parties, and they have like this like consultative role. It's an incredibly convoluted and elaborate system, but you know, like that whole thing, and you can find, you know, like the Chinese system is like not. It's not democratic in the sense of like you can like vote for someone or like okay, like it's not democratic in the sense of you can make a vote that will make a thing happen, right? You know, and to be fair, the US is also not democratic in the sense of you can cast a vote and make a thing happen, right? But this is sort of like, you know, okay, like it is a society that is less democratic than the US, which is sort of astounding considering the US like doesn't even have one person, one vote. right? And we'll get into like republics a bit in a second, but like, you know, like Chinese, like quote unquote democracy is like not, it has very little to do with like the principle of like like 51% of the population votes for a thing and it happens, right? But you know, like if you look at the sort of rhetoric that you see from and the internal justification of like you know, you sort of like read Chinese bureaucratic documents, or you read sort of like their PR stuff. Like they constantly talk about like, yeah, we're going to make a more democratic society, because like that legitimacy, like the idea of democracy is really incredibly powerful and enduring. And it's something that like, even like, you know, like, I mean, like, I don't know, like the Saudis don't pretend to be a democracy really, but like most of the other like Gulf monarchies have like election-y things, right? Like it's an idea that is enduring and powerful enough that even people who don't agree with it are forced to sort of like do this pageantry of it. And I think that's really interesting. And I think it explains a lot of the kind of, I mean, especially around Occupy, but I think it explains a lot of the kind of political movements that we've been seeing over the last about 15 years. Which is, I think this is also an explanation for why we see so many riots as a form of as a form of politics, and why you get these demands that are sort of like, I don't know, you like in the 2011 revolutions, and you sort of also see this now. You get a lot of sort of very abstract calls for democracy while also doing things that like are quote unquote not legitimate in a democratic society. Like, for example, like rioting is not supposed to be sort of like a legitimate political action in a society, because, you know, like there's this whole like because there's a system under which violence is supposed to be administered, right? Like you have a state, the state is the thing that's supposed to do violence. If anyone else does it outside of that, they're like, you know, they're an illegitimate extremist. But okay, if we go back to our sort of base definition of what democracy is, right? Democracy is a collective decision-making apparatus and an enforcement mechanism. And it's like, well, what is a riot, right? A riot is both of those things happening at the same time. There are a bunch of people collectively making a decision and then imposing that decision immediately.
Yeah. Is it E.P. Thompson who called the Luddites collective bargaining by riot?
Like, quite possibly.
yeah. It's often like referenced now and other stuff. Like people talk about like you know, like your hair they're used all the time. I think the origin of it is or is it Eric Hobsbawm? Could be Hobsbawm. Anyway, yeah, famously the Luddites were called collective bargaining by riot.
Yeah, I think. Well, I think there is something sort of interesting there about collective bargaining by sort of physical force. You know, it's like the decision-making apparatus is happening outside of the sort of normal bounds in which the decision-making apparatus is supposed to happen. And yeah, I think there's a sort of, there's another, I forget exactly which Graeber thing this is from, but there's Graeber, this might actually be from his essay about Batman, which is pretty funny.
What's his take on Alfred's class status? Man?
I don't think unfortunately, I think that's the one thing he doesn't mention. I'm pretty sure there's no Alfred discourse in it. There's lots of other discourse. He calls
coward.
Is it Bane? No, he calls the Joker. He calls one of the Batman villains a Zerzanite, which I think is very funny. Yeah, but you know, okay, he has this argument about sort of like, okay, how do you know? So the other part of democracy is the part about the people, right? And this is always a thing that's very much in contention. Like, how do you determine what the people, quote unquote, are? And, you know, the structure of Athenian society is very much determined by who is and isn't included in the people, right? Like, you know, women can't vote. If you're a slave, you also can't vote. There are lots of people who are directly under Athenian rule who can't vote and are, you know, not part of the people and therefore are sort of like, and this is in some sense the origin of like the trajectory democracy goes on, right? Which is that the trajectory it goes through is republicanism, because, you know, like the founders of the U.S., right? If you look at the sort of that style of 50+1 style majority democracy, right? Those guys, you know, as we talked about, like they didn't want a democracy because they thought in a democracy people would vote against their sort of like aristocratic interests.
Yeah.
And so what they decide on in Yeah, it's like, okay, well, all these people own slaves, all these people owned a bunch of land, all these people, like, I don't know, are like bankers and shit. And they're like, okay, so it's going to be a bad idea if we let people like decide what to do with their stuff. So instead, they go to this Republican structure. And the Republican structure is, I think, very interesting because it takes the 50+1 structure, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, it abstracts it to the point where your vote, for the most part, basically simply does not matter. Like every once in a while, in like a local election, it can do something. But what's actually happening, right, is you are like you are selecting who is going to rule you. And the other part of this is that the enforcement mechanism becomes autonomous from the people itself. Because unlike an Athenian thing where like everyone's either like on a ship because they're like they're part of the Navy, or they like, they can go strap on their fucking shield and like plates and grab their big ass spear, right? And you're like, okay, well, this is the state, right? The state is like fucking Jerry and his friend like Patroclus or whatever the fuck, like forming a shield wall with the shields they have at home, and that's the thing, like. In sort of like warrior democracies of that style, like there's like the Kshatriya Republic, I think is the name of it. There are these sort of like there are republics like this, or quote unquote republics like this that exist in various places in the world where you have these sort of like military classes that like do 50+1. But those people, right? The enforcement mechanism is very very direct. In a republic, the enforcement mechanism becomes autonomous, and also the decision-making apparatus becomes both of them become autonomous from like the people, quote unquote, who are supposed to be making the decisions. And suddenly you have the situation where, okay, if you live in the US, right, it is very, very clear that there are lots of things that everyone supports that simply like is not happening, right? Like, I mean, you could look at sort of like universal healthcare. Like, I mean, for example, like, another example that we could take that's, I think, for poignant right now is like, there was a pretty recent study on like what percentage of the population in the US supports trans people getting like trans affirming healthcare, and it was like 70%. And then, right. You look on a fucking state by state basis, right? And it's like, well, we'll be talking about this more sort of later, but on a state by state basis, like, oh, well, that's not fucking happening, right? People are just making it illegal. And it's very easy to look at this and go like, well, okay, so the principle of 50+1 is being violated, right? Like, this is not a democracy. Something else has happened. Mm-hmm. One sort of solution to this is to go back to, is to very literally go back and ask the question, who is the people? And this is in a lot of ways what Occupy is doing, right? Like, Occupy's answer to this is like, we are the 99%, right? It's okay. So like there is a thing that is claiming to be the demos in democracy, which is Congress, right? But like, okay, Congress trivially is not the people, right? It's at best a section of them. It is definitionally not in any right. So you have lots of versions of this. Like the American one tends to be a lot of people sitting in a square, but can actually convening a something that's kind of like a democracy. But that's the other thing about it. Like, is Occupy democracy, right? Like, they don't have violence as like a political tool, really. I mean, this isn't to say that like there wasn't some weird shady shit that happened, but like, like they don't have the ability to sort of like coerce people into accepting like a 51% decision that people like genuinely can't live with, right? So they don't really like. They in some sense, in challenging democracy, they create something that isn't really a democracy, right? They create a sort of like elaborate consensus process, and this is, or
like if the Kratos part is, I'm trying to think of a way. I've been trying to think for like 10 minutes about a way to phrase this, but like if the strength and power is the people and is evenly distributed among the people, as opposed to like, it's the state, and like if some of this theoretical abstraction of the will of the majority of the people, then that leads to a consensus almost by definition, right? Like if
I mean, I think the sort of breaking principle here is if you think that it is legitimate to use for a group of people to use violence to enforce something, and at that point everyone is still armed, then you get a 50+1 structure, right?
Right.
But if you don't think it's legitimate to use violence to coerce people into sort of like doing whatever the thing is you want to enforce, then by definition you get some kind of consensus process. But, you know, we have a system that everyone like thinks that what's happening, like, you know, in some sense, like the ideological principle is that, like, you know, everyone thinks that what's happening is you have a 50+1 system, and that's where the legitimacy of the system comes from, because, like, you know, we voted for these people. Yeah. But also it's so clearly not, and also like the police are so clearly just this sort of like roaming like bandit force that is like not even like remotely like they technically draw legitimacy from the people, but like, you know, okay, like what happens if you try to convene an assembly of the people in the US? The answer is they beat the shit out of you with sticks and then tear gas you and then like start shooting you.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is sort of what you know, like this is what Occupy proved, right? Which is like, if you challenge the sort of the claim of the government to represent the people, right? Because like, who the fuck are these assholes to be like, hey, no, like we are the people. We are sort of like the legitimate manifestation of the people. If you want to do anything, like, you have to go through us. Well, it's like, okay, so like how did they get that? How did they get that authority, right? And the answer is they did it. They did it by staging an armed revolution. That's what their actual legitimacy derives from, right? Is they won the armed revolution.
Yeah, and violently dispossessed people of their land before they did that, like piggybacking off colonialism to do an armed revolution.
Yeah, and so like, okay, but like, you know, their legitimacy is incredibly tenuous, right? Like, this gives you this question of how do you determine like what, you know, how does a democracy determine what the people are? And one way that you can make a sort of counterclaim against a democracy is by physically assembling a shit ton of people in a place and going like, we are like physically we are the people and we are going to make decisions. And you know, that can look like Occupy with like a 7-hour meeting about where we want to put plants, right? Or it can look, and this is, you know, you get this a bit in Occupy, but like, or it can look like, you know, here are 100,000 people, like they are going to fight, they are going to just like throw shit at the police until the police run away. And you know, that is a thing that like we have seen in this country. This will be like another episode, but this was a thing that happens in Mexico in 2006 in Oaxaca, where people basically ran out the police by literally hundreds of thousands of people, waking up to a bunch of police just beating the shit out of like a bunch of striking teachers, and then like picking up a brick and throwing it.
You see it a little bit, not really, but like in like Podemos in Spain, if you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
Like they kind of, their attempt to have people determine their policy platform. It's not largely a successful one, but like.
Yeah, well, I mean, interesting. Obama did that too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this was the thing. Obama had this job, like one of Obama's initial pitches was like there's going to be this like online thing where people could vote and like decide on policy things, and he immediately amended it. And Podemos also immediately like this is one of the things that like this is like one of the ways you try to like capture this kind of like, you know, because what you're really like when riot police are like fighting like a bunch of people in the street, right? Like what you're watching is two kinds of democracy fighting with each other, right? You're watching a sort of like you're watching the crowd, which is a very, very immediate literal form of democracy, right? Where the crowd makes a decision and people do things, fighting the police, who are like a very the police are technically a part of a democratic system, right? But the police are just purely the sort of like they're they are the violence by which the people rule, and you are watching you're watching these two things sort of like clash with each other. And I mean, I think one of the sort of like products of the way that republicanism like specifically developed, or like republicanism in the sense of like this is a republic, not a democracy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, in terms of like. Yeah, small r, but also in the sense of like, okay, so instead of you voting on things directly, like, you vote for some asshole who
like representative
votes to increase
democracy
the police funding. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Right, like that sort of like unmooring of the means of violence from the people, which was which is the essence of democracy, good or bad. Yeah. Right. And I would also say like, that can go like that sort of like having violence and democracy, like, you know, violence and decision making being paired together, like that's not always a good thing. That can go really, really badly, right? Like, you know, because like for example, like a race riot, right? Like a Klan march, right? Is technically an expression of democracy, right? It is, you know, it is a group of people convening themselves as the people and then doing an action. And, you know, and like I this has been something I've been forced to think about a lot with the anti-trans laws, which is that like trans people are like, you know, the most optimistic estimate you could like have is like maybe 2.5% of the population if you assume there's a bunch of people who are trans and don't know that they're trans, right? Like, you know, and if you were 2.5% of the population in a 50+1 system, it is very easy for 51. Like there is no physical way that you can have, like, if 50+1% of the population decides to kill you all, there's nothing you can do, right? Like there's no amount of like voting that you can do that will make you not die, because that's the sort of like
the tyranny of the majority or whatever, like, or like the
yeah.
Are you familiar with like the argument against utilitarianism, that like the greatest good for the greatest number, or the greatest happiness for the greatest number? If you're looking to serve the greatest happiness for the greatest number, if like 10 people get 2 units of happiness from beating one person to death with sticks, then like she can't experience as much sadness as they experience happiness. Like the democratic impulse in action.
Yeah, and you know, like this is a thing that is, again, what we talked about, like is normally brought up by like incredibly corrupt and sort of venal elites who want to protect their status, but like it is also, you know, and like this is part of the reason why, for example, the U.S. just fucking puts like immigrants in camps, right? Because they can't fucking vote, right? Like they're not part of like quote unquote the people, right? Like there are large sections of the population who are just, you know, like booted from this entire process, right? This is an argument that William C. Anderson and Zoe Samudzi make in the book As Black as Resistance, which is that like, yeah, like black people like fucking are not part of this shit, right? Like they're not a constitutive like part of the people TM, right?
Yeah.
And you know, this they call this the anarchism of blackness, which is this sort of like it's a position of being like removed as like a legitimate sort of like subject in the state who can, you know, exercise your like democratic rights or whatever the fuck. It's like, yeah, okay, like lots of people have never had this, and you know, this even in this sort of like, you know, relatively egalitarian, like, you know, like there have been like parts of the U.S., like especially the early U.S., right? You have your like sort of like New England Town Council, right? It's like, well, what is your New England Town Council vote to do? It's like, well, it votes to send out the fucking militia to kill indigenous people, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, even even when the U.S. has functioned as something that is closer to like a like democracy TM, where like the means of violence and the means of sort of decision making are actually placed in directly in people's hands, right? Like that doesn't always go well.
Right.
But
yeah,
you know, but like, you know, we have now developed a like we developed a system that has like the worst of every single parts of every single aspect of this, right? We're like, okay, so we have 50+1 as the sort of like legitimating factor, but also 50% of the population plus one does not actually vote for a thing. It is possible for like more than half of the population. It's possible for a majority of the population to vote for a presidential candidate and you get a different one, right? Like,
yeah,
it's possible. Like, we've seen this, like, so many fucking elections have had this now, like 2 in my lifetime. And also we have the other part of it, which is that we also have like we have the other democratic principle of like, you should be able to enforce a political opinion by violence.
Yeah, we got that in space.
Yep. And you know, guess who fucking gets to make that decision? It's not 50+1 of you. Like, no. It's a bunch of assholes in suits and like 6 cops.
Yeah. I think a good way to view the US is like a bunch of landowners made a system where land votes and people don't.
Yeah. And then they went about making sure that like, even if the land does vote for a thing, if it's not corn subsidies, it doesn't happen. Like,
There's 75 weird dudes in between your vote and anything actually happening.
Yeah.
Which is how you get like this kind of constitutional magic that the Trumpists are always trying to do, because like it's not actually like that far from reality, right? There are like 17 magic incantations that have to get said after you put your ballot in the box, and then an old white dude's in charge again.
Yeah, but I think like the U.S. system is like it's stunningly bad. Like it's a really dog shit, like terribly written democratic system. Like it is designed not to function. Like that was actually the point. of it.
Yeah.
There's there's a king, a thing that like you shouldn't have. Like the president is supposed to be a king, right? Like I think like if you go back and read like what the balance of powers was supposed to be, it was like they're doing the Roman thing of like you need like you need to combine a king, an oligarchy, and a democracy. And it's like, well, okay, so we have like a fucking king who could just like kill people. Just great.
It's great.
But okay. So I think the broad total argument that I want to make here is that what we have been seeing over the last about 15 years, right, with the sort of movement of the squares, with the series of uprisings that we saw, I mean, in 2020 in the U.S., but also like all over the world from about 2018 to, I mean, some of them are still going now, right? It's been a reaction to sort of this, right? It's been a reaction to democracy as a legitimating principle not matching even what the principle is supposed to be, and then people going out into the streets and doing democracy. And the sort of clash between like democracy in theory and democracy in action mostly has resulted in democracy in action winning, because it turns out the thing about republics is that they're really, really, really good at creating like military apparatuses that are very hard to defeat by just purely fighting them.
Yep. Sadly.
Yeah. But, however, sometimes they lose. And and as the old IRA thing goes, they have to get lucky every time. We only have to get lucky once. So,
keep collectively bargaining by riot.
Yeah.
What the fuck else are you gonna do?
Vote? Like,
yeah. Vote like your life depends on it, kids. You can vote if you want to, right? Like there are instances in which it might meaningfully reduce the cruelty of the state a little bit, some places sometimes, but yeah, it's not gonna like take away the central fucking canard of the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah, so do democracy by rioting. That is our official legal position. This is legally non-actionable, but also legally actionable at the same time. This is called dialectics. And yeah, this has been It Could Happen Here. Find us in the places. Don't find us in the places.
Read David Graeber.
Yeah, do that. Read There Never Was a West. It's great. Nobody reads it. It's really good.
People have been asking for Graeber book because we keep talking about him. So yeah, read There Never Was a West. Read Towards an Anarchist Anthropology. Bullshit Jobs is a good start if you've not read much.
If you want to be the real Grabehead and read something that fucking no one has read, go read Towards an Anthropological Theory of Value.
I ran into one of my colleagues at Supermarket the other day and we were talking about that. So
good book. No one has ever read it. Read
more Graeber.
Let's talk about modern home shopping. It's sort of become a fun side hobby, right? Scrolling listings at night, dreaming about kitchens you've never seen, or backyards you haven't even stepped foot in, all from the comfort of pretty much anywhere. Redfin knows a lot of people like you want to own, but are stuck in this browsing mode loop. That's where Redfin flips the script. With listings that update within minutes and tours you can book right from the Redfin app, you can see your dream home the moment it appears. Now, liking a listing is easy, but actually landing it, that's where Redfin comes in. Redfin has over 2,200 agents with local expertise. And Redfin agents close twice as many deals as other agents. That means they want to help you win, not just window shop. Redfin is built to help you go from just looking to wait, this could actually be home. So become the newest neighbor on the block. Visit redfin.com to start finding and start owning. That's redfin.com.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
Life gets messy. Spills, stains, pet accidents, and kid chaos. But with Anabay, cleaning up is easy. Our sofas are fully machine washable, inside and out, so you never have to stress about messes again. Made with liquid and stain-resistant fabrics, that means fewer stains and more peace of mind. Designed for real life, our sofas feature changeable fabric covers, allowing you to refresh your style anytime. Need flexibility? Our modular design lets you rearrange your sofa effortlessly. Perfect for cozy apartments or spacious homes. Plus, they're earth-friendly and built to last. That's why over 200,000 happy customers have made the switch. Upgrade your space today. Sofas start at just $699. Visit washablesofas.com now and bring home a sofa made for life. That's washablesofas.com. Offers are subject to change and certain restrictions may apply.
Yeah, it could happen here. That's the podcast that you're listening to. It's a news podcast about shit falling apart. That's the only intro you're going to get because Garrison is right now in the city of Atlanta, Georgia, reporting on the continuing Stop Cop City protests. Garrison's done a number of scripted episodes covering these in detail over the last year and change. They're in the thick of it right now, so I'm just going to bring them and a friend on to talk about what has been happening this week.
Yes.
That's your cue.
This week is a special week because this is the fifth week of action that has happened here in Atlanta as a part of the Stop Cop City and Defend the Atlanta Forest movement. This episode is going to be like a midweek update because this week of action is still very much ongoing. There's still many days that things can happen with, but a lot has already happened in these first few days anyway. So we're gonna kind of do a quick little update, and then a more comprehensive piece will be later down the line. But with me here to help talk about what's gone down so far is someone from the Atlanta Community Press Collective, Clark. Hello, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
So
thanks for being on.
Yeah, we've been kind of teamed up the past few days here as many things, both silly and serious, have taken place across Atlanta.
Yeah.
Safety in numbers.
Safety in numbers. Yeah.
It's always nice to have friends when you're watching jackbooted thugs go fucking apeshit with all of their new toys.
And I mean, I think that is part of the week of action idea, is getting as many people here as possible, and hopefully some of that makes some people more safe. That's something that we'll probably talk more in detail later when we have kind of hindsight. But I guess today let's just start on what's kind of happened so far chronologically. I guess starting on Saturday, I met you Saturday for a rally at Gresham Park. I think it's where we first met up this week.
Yes, we met at the rally at Gresham Park, which had about, I would say, an hour's worth of speeches before they kicked off a march down the bike path from Gresham Park to what the activists call Weelaunee People's Park, which is the site of the protest beforehand. So the forest around it had been unoccupied since the raid in January that saw the killing of Tortuguita. So this was the first sort of permanent return to the forest. So we took a, I don't know, 40-minute march down the path and then landed in Weolani People's Park. They had one more little round of chants with a promise to defend the forest. And then they broke off, and everything was a nice, really relaxing day.
Yeah, it was a pretty positive start to the week of action. People essentially retook Weolani People's Park and started to go into the forest once again. Camp got set up in the forest. Lots of people from both in town and folks from out of town started to camp in the woods again. And then in the hours after this small march, people started to prepare for the music festival, which was planned like a few hundred feet away from Weolani People's Park, I guess, inside like a more like open field area. And music festival went off without a hitch the first day. It was pretty rad.
Yeah, I think there was about 500 people that first night of the music festival.
Yeah.
The vibes were great. Everyone was having a fun time. I think it went on until about 1 a.m. And I don't think the first day could have gone better.
I think it went on till about 4 a.m.
Okay, well, I went to bed at 1 a.m.
I did not go to bed at 1 a.m. I was at the music festival quite a bit longer.
I'm quite a bit older, and I think that was the reason I had to leave.
Garrison doesn't understand things like needing sleep yet.
So
give
true.
them another year or two before they hit that sweet wall.
So true.
Mm-hmm. Then I'll have to find another teenager to go do journalism.
just every like 4 or 5 years, you just find a new one.
Yeah, just keep re-upping like Leo DiCaprio.
Perfect.
So the first day was pretty good. There was no substantial police response that I saw. Police kind of left people alone in the forest. The march from Gresham Park was fine. And people got to spend a night in the woods again, which, we had not had that many people in the woods in like months.
This is, it should be said, like camping and a music festival, but it's like relatively high risk because people have gotten significant charges just for camping in the woods in the past.
Yes.
And the very recent past.
Some of the warrants that have been issued that justify the charges like domestic terrorism have included things such as sleeping in a hammock with someone else in the forest. And that's the reason why they're getting charged as a domestic terrorist. So yeah, it is a music festival. People are camping. It's kind of chill, but also there's absolutely this kind of ever present kind of fear that despite what is being done being pretty kind of like normal and not in and of itself militant or radical, still the consequences from the state are kind of always looming. Which kind of leads us to Sunday.
Yeah.
Which picks up exactly where we left off.
Yes.
So I got there around noon on Sunday,
Same.
I think. And the first thing we see is a bouncy castle.
Large bouncy castle in front of the music festival. It has a big Stop Cop City banner, massive multicolored bouncy castle. People are having a pretty good time.
Yeah, as soon as they finished setting up the bouncy castle, it was filled, and everyone. I think there were about 100 people just set up on blankets around the stage
initially. And I think in the next few hours, that definitely grew to there being hundreds and hundreds of people returning to the music festival for the second day. I think the march on Saturday was anywhere between like. I saw estimates of anywhere between 500 to 1,000 people. Music festival seems to be like over 500 people. And then on the second day of the music festival, it slowly grew in size to again being hundreds and hundreds of people. And it started off just kind of continuing on with the music, continuing on with people having nice times in the woods. I walked around the campsites, had conversations with people talking about all sorts of anarchy-related things. And then there, slowly throughout the day, I think this was posted on social media as well, there was a plan for a rally at 5 p.m. to meet on part of the field that the music festival was also happening on. By the time that happened, people met up. The group that kind of converged was in a mix of black bloc, camo bloc, so like people like covered head to toe in various camo print. And they set off from the RC field where the music festival was at. So they left. They went down Boulder Crest Road to the section of the woods called the Power Line Cut. So to understand what is going on here, you kind of have to understand some of the geography of the Wolani Forest. So we have like the Wolani People's Park parking lot and that immediate kind of campsite. This is like the easternmost part. And then there's the RC field, which is just like right next to that to the west. And then even west of that is Entrenchment Creek. And Entrenchment Creek kind of divides up this section of the forest. And then everything west of Entrenchment Creek is generally referred to as like the old Atlanta Prison Farm area. And the power line cut is pretty close to the creek, and that is kind of where this prison farm section is. And this is an area of the woods that cops have been more rigorous about policing, more rigorous about surveilling, more rigorous about having kind of constant surveillance and people on the ground. It's estimated that they're spending over $40,000 a day running security on this part on this part of the woods. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
and for that amount of money, they could hire like more people than are on the police force if they just used Fiverr. You know, that's really the tactic they ought to be embracing.
And I think if they had used Fiverr, they might have had enough people to counter the protesters. But the overbloated police salaries, they only had like 20 people there.
Yeah, they did not have many. So this group set down Boulder Crest. They marched up the power line cut. They laid out like tire barricades in the street. And then upon them marching on the power line cut, after they arrived near the police surveillance setup that we just mentioned, some of the equipment somehow burst into flames. People have blamed like shoddy construction. People have said that, you know, sometimes equipment just does that. But yes, no. So people set a whole bunch of police infrastructure on fire, set some construction equipment on fire that is being used to destroy sections of the forest where they wanted to build Cop City. Police were repelled with stuff like rocks and fireworks. The cops that were stationed there very quickly retreated. I think lots of stuff was set on fire. There was the surveillance tower was set on fire. A bulldozer was set on fire.
Well, I mean, it's winter. People need fires to camp comfortably. I understand.
A UTV was some kind of big trailer like storage unit thing was set on fire.
Yes, and the cops were very worried about that. They didn't know if there was flammable material inside that.
You wouldn't store flammable materials in an easily accessible area.
We shut down an entire interstate because we did that a few years ago. So we would in Atlanta.
Atlanta would. All of Atlanta collectively. So this happened. A thermal chopper from a thermal police helicopter was watching all of this.
And honestly, the footage is pretty interesting.
It is worth discussing how this type of surveillance works.
Almost I think the same thermal cameras that are on the Bayraktar drones that Turkey makes, by the way.
It's pretty.
Or a little bit of Foucault's boomerang. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. No, it's pretty frightening with their ability to track individual people.
I also think it's worth because there's video of the cops being pelted with stuff, including fireworks. I think it's worth noting that, like, while it is unpleasant to be pelted with the kind of stuff the cops were pelted with, you and I have both been pelted with numerous fireworks of similar size, and it is not a serious threat to life and limb.
No, we survived,
yeah,
but
it's modestly unpleasant.
But the cops that were there were not very happy about it. They put out calls for officer in need of support and for all available units in the greater Atlanta area to converge on the forest. People who marched to to this section of the power line cut started to disperse throughout the woods, and I was back by the road watching this from hundreds and hundreds of feet away because I did not need to go up there. That would not have been helpful in any way. But
No.
as this was happening, a whole bunch of police cars zoomed by. So I started following those cars. I went back to the music festival. I met up with some other media people that I was communicating with, and then I got a text message saying that a cop showed up in the parking lot of the Walani People's Park with an AR-15. I start making my way over, and then as I'm running across the music festival, I see a whole bunch of police at the parking lot for the music festival itself at the RC field. So I don't make my way over to the Walani People's Park parking lot where there's the AR-15, because instead I see way more police closer to where I am. So I stage there. Minutes later, police start running into the music festival. They start tackling seemingly anyone who's like by themselves and that they could like get their hands on. It didn't seem incredibly targeted. This is something that we'll kind of I'll probably like discuss in more detail once we have slightly more hindsight. But a lot of the arrests did not seem specifically targeted. In the bail hearings from just yesterday, as of time of recording, they said they were going after people who had mud on their clothing, and like it rained a day before the music festival.
Incredible detective work. Only a true terrorist would have mud.
I think a month and a half ago, Ryan Millsap tore up the parking lot. So it rained the day before, and anyone who would walk through that parking lot or the trail system had to walk through mud.
You're walking through mud. Also, people are just sitting on the dirt at the music festival. Like, so yes.
I mean, this might also include like useful advice for people in the future, because if the movie Predator was telling me the truth, and it's never lied to me yet, coating yourself entirely in mud makes thermal vision no longer function.
Yeah. So police started tackling people. It definitely, they were going after people who were like by themselves. And yeah, people with mud. The police alleged in their warrants that were read out at the bail hearing that they were going after people who had metal shields, and they said that almost everyone they arrested was arrested carrying a metal shield. Now, here's a few funny notes about that. There was not a single metal shield present at all. There were a few small plastic shields, not a single metal one. And in looking through all of the footage of arrests, the footage that I have that's been sent to NLG, footage that other people have had, no one was arrested carrying a shield, let alone a metal one. So a whole bunch of the reasoning for these arrests is incredibly suspect. Police raided once, tackled, arrested like 5 people, carried them out. They raided again, and this is where they started launching tear gas into the forest. I got gassed decently bad. It was not very fun. First time I've gotten tear gassed in years. Old memories. And during this
it's
time,
like a kiss from a dear friend.
So that was exactly what I was thinking. And I did not. I brought gas masks to Atlanta, but I didn't bring them on the Sunday because
it was a music festival.
Because usually you don't bring gas masks to a music festival.
Yeah, I mean the thing about tear gas and gas masks is that like, when you're used to getting tear gassed, it's really easy to have them handy and get them on. When like you're not used to being tear gassed, you're probably not going to bring it with you.
Yeah. So some people in the forest got gassed pretty bad. I mean, the whole point was to sow confusion, make it so that people could not hide out in the woods. It's to make people scatter, run away, so that they can be tackled and arrested. One person that was a National Lawyers Guild legal observer was arrested. They're also a lawyer at the Southern Poverty Law Center. This person was the only person arrested that I'm aware of that was released on bail. Everybody else is being held. Bet. everyone else is being held indefinitely.
That actually includes, there was a second legal observer who was not wearing the hat. So during the bail hearings yesterday, their lawyer said that they were a legal observer, but because they weren't wearing the hat, and because they were not local, they were not given bail.
It was reported there was around 35 arrests the night of.
Yes.
Initially.
So, APD released a press release that said there were 35 detainees, which at the time they released it was a very interesting term because we thought 35 people had just been arrested and were on their way to jail.
Yeah.
But just about 45 minutes after that, 12 of those 35 were released.
So this was very curious. There is a lot of theories going on for what has happened. I'm just going to relay what I heard when I was listening to the bail hearings yesterday. So a defense lawyer for some of the people arrested said yesterday during the bail hearing that, to his understanding, the 12 people that were detained but not arrested were people from Atlanta. And the 23 people who got arrested and charged were not from Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And so what police could be doing here is basically, if you're from Atlanta, we will ID you, but we're not going to actually arrest and charge you, but we will arrest and charge you if you're from out of state. So they can continue this outside agitator narrative. So they can say every single person arrested after this protest was from out of state. The cops and the media have done a lot of weird collusion regarding the events of Sunday night. They've conflated the location of the arrests a lot. Police want to make this seem like they arrested people at a crime scene, that they arrested people as they were torching construction equipment, which just isn't true. They arrested people almost seemingly at random at a music festival that was hundreds and hundreds of feet away. It is not an easy walk from the power line cut to the music festival, because not only do you have to go through some pretty harsh brush, some woods, and jump over a pretty large creek. Alternatively, you have to walk down a road, which nobody did. So the police have done a police and local media, large corporate local media have tried to make it seem like that this music festival thing is just a red herring, that it's not important. But a lot of the people that were arrested seem to be people that were just enjoying this music festival. So 23 of them have been charged with domestic terrorism. Most of those people are being held indefinitely for now. The bail hearing is going to get appealed to the Superior Court. We'll see if that changes anything. The judge said that they were not presented with any evidence that these people did anything wrong, but they still decided to not give them bail. The reasoning for that was that the judge thought that people who did not have any local ties to the community could be a flight risk. And some people who did have local ties to the community, they said, still were a threat to the community somehow, despite many of them not having any prior convictions, not having any prior arrests. It seemed pretty suspect during the bail hearing, but that was most of Sunday night. Eventually, police kind of surrounded and kettled the group of people that was still at the music festival hours after these arrests happened. They gave a 5-minute dispersal warning, and then they gave a 10-minute dispersal warning. Eventually, cops let most of the people who were gathered right in front of the stage leave. There was probably 50 people at that point, because people throughout the night were trying to leave as police were raiding the forest. Some people were just let go and were able to leave. Others were detained almost arbitrarily. It's hard to say. So that was the first 2 days of the week of action, and it felt like a week. What happened the next day? So, yeah,
the nonviolent direct actions, and then the
Monday,
the events. Oh no, Monday.
Yeah, because that was only the second day.
No, Monday is the city council meeting that we were in for 8 hours.
Yes. So Monday there was an interfaith coalition of clergy that held a press conference outside of City Hall, basically endorsing the Stop Cop City movement, or Clark, how would you describe what happened?
So there were a couple of elements to the clergy. We'll just call it an action. The first thing was they presented a letter with over 200 other clergy members who had signed that, denouncing Cop City, calling for an independent investigation into the killing of Tortuguita, and calling for an independent investigation into the use of domestic terrorism charges to chill free speech. And then during that press conference, Miko Shaban called for land back in the Wilani Forest to the Muskogee people to stored in coordination with the legacy Black residents of the area.
Yeah, so they were both like talking about the need to stop Cop City, but also providing a plan on how this land could be used. This land that is leased by the city. It is on DeKalb County. After this press conference, some of these people from the coalition gave public comment during the city council. And that was most of the events on Monday that I can recall. Oh, there was the Purim in the forest that night, and that was very enjoyable. That was kind of the first time people like tried to go back into the forest since the Sunday night raid. And I think that started to slowly boost morale again.
Yeah, and I think we should talk about also after the raid, there were a few really unique things that happened. There were a lot of people who didn't have housing and they were housed by local activists. There was the bus network was set up to transport people from the site where everyone was getting arrested to somewhere safe. They moved breakfast offsite to a different location. So there was a lot of work done in continuing the week of action and providing some sort of infrastructure for all of these people who had come into town and didn't have anywhere else to go.
Yeah. Once again, the resiliency on display was impressive, and people's ability to adapt to the ever-evolving situation was tested, and people adapted pretty well. Tuesday, there was starting to be like typical nonviolent direct actions happening throughout to downtown. A whole bunch of banner drops happened around highways and interstates around Atlanta. People were
detained for that.
Yes, 3 people were briefly detained at the site of a banner drop. But throughout the day, there was people handing out letters to folks like the CEO of
Norfolk Southern,
Alan Shaw, and then similar types of like nonviolent direct action were happening. A small march was led from Woodruff Park to AT&T and Georgia Pacific. There was like maybe 50.
I think 50 is an accurate number.
50 people gathered to march.
Well, there were 50 marchers gathered.
And then like 120 police officers in the surrounding area. Massive police presence. Police caused a huge disruption to downtown. That's something we've seen kind of ever since the Sunday raid. The police have been incredibly heavy-handed in their response to every single thing, whether that be people handing out flyers or whether that be people at a music festival. A whole bunch of police were mobilized Tuesday night near the forest. Like 120 cops, at least 3 or 4 different agencies, Bearcats, helicopters. I think it's unclear what they were doing. This is something that we might speculate further on once we have hindsight. When I put together my kind of a more intense deep dive. And then today, the thing that me and Clark just got back from. How do you want to explain today's events?
So today was a lot of leaflet handing out and marching. It was a smaller group than the march yesterday. I would say there was like 20, 25 people.
Yeah, like it started off being like only about like a dozen. And it slowly grew to like maybe like 2 or 3 dozen. But yeah, small group of people.
Yeah, small group of people. And when they met at noon, they met and they broke into 3 different groups.
Yeah.
And so the group that we followed was just, they walked a little northward and started passing out flyers at the Petrie Center MARTA station. They went to all 3 entrances, and each group warranted its own police surveillance unit.
Massive police surveillance unit was following everybody around. There was a SWAT vehicle parked right outside where these people were handing out flyers. There was like 50 to 100 cops flanking people on from different sides. Eventually, all of the smaller groups that kind of branched off converged again, and police then gave a dispersal warning to people who were standing on a sidewalk outside of a Hard Rock cafe, who were handing out flyers.
Okay, well, in that case, they may have been protecting people because you want to get folks as far away from the Hard Rock Cafe as possible.
Garrison
someone
wanted to go to the Hard Rock,
and that's a real dangerous.
I was campaigning for all of the press gathered to meet afterwards at the Hard Rock Cafe.
It was between the Hard Rock Hooters
guys on that one.
So
Garrison,
yeah.
I watched you at the Rainforest Cafe. You barely made it through that dessert.
That
the
was
Hard
different.
Rock Cafe
That was
is even
different.
worse.
That was different. I did get food poisoning from that Rainforest Cafe. I will continue to claim.
And I woke up with a headache for an inexplicable reason.
Not because you were carrying around a bottle of bourbon throughout Las Vegas.
Bourbon and a THC yogurt or a milkshake or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So cops gave a dispersal warning to people who were not in fact blocking a sidewalk, were simply handing out flyers. People were still walking everywhere. So they basically moved to a different section of the sidewalk, and cops kind of left them alone. Nearby, a group of indigenous activists from the Indian Collective, I believe is what it's.
It's actually Muskogee Nation.
The Muskogee Nation went to a meeting that the mayor of Atlanta, Andre Dickens, was having nearby. Clark, I think you know slightly more about what happened here than I do.
Yeah, so several of the indigenous activists entered. So where he was having this meeting is a mall.
Great.
in true Atlanta fashion. So they entered the mall and they found where he was in the building. And so Miko Colonel Shaban delivered a letter essentially evicting the city of Atlanta from the Weelaunee Forest. So they got in without the police noticing. And then the moment they got out, a large squad of police
SWAT
swarmed
team
in.
mobilized. They were not happy how close people got to the mayor.
So at this point, we don't know what the full reaction of that's going to be. We do know that the mayor ran away from accepting the letter, and then I believe they handed it to one of the mayors.
A mayor running.
There are few more beautiful sights than a mayor running away.
No. More mayors need to spend time fleeing from their peoples.
So, I think this episode comes out, I think, like late Thursday night, Friday morning, Thursday afternoon. We are recording this Wednesday. There's plans for Thursday. There's gonna be a large march at 6 p.m. I believe there's gonna be a youth rally at Saturday, and then on Sunday morning, Manuel Turan, Tortuguita's family, is holding a memorial for Tort in the Weelaunee Forest. Where I've been told that they're going to spread Tort's ashes inside the woods. And that is kind of the last thing that's going to happen. And so those are the things that have not yet took place. But we've explained in pretty excruciating detail some of what's happened so far. So yeah, that's kind of the current state of on the ground at the week of action. I guess, Robert, do you have any questions for Clark as someone who's kind of been on the ground in Atlanta for years covering Stop Cop City?
Yeah. I mean, I'm curious what over the last few weeks, like you've had some direct clashes with the police that have ended in a variety of ways. Broadly speaking, is there anything that you're kind of leaning towards this doesn't work? And is there anything you're kind of leaning towards this seems to work really well?
So there is something to be said for the more aggressive actions, and I think they serve their purpose. And there was definitely something to be said for the forest occupation. It continued the movement until there was a groundswell of support. So at this point, I think the actions have sort of switched gear into more nonviolent direct actions, as we're seeing this week. And I think that those actions will continue. I'm sure the anarchist contingent will continue to do some other more aggressive, shall we say, direct actions.
Yeah.
And all of these work. We have a large swath of different avenues of engagement that the movement has developed, and each of them has their place. And if they're used in the proper place, they are used to great effect.
I think one kind of change that has happened, we've seen a bit of a decrease in the types of like nighttime sabotage, like the sort of like attack and disappear tactics that was really popular in like the early days of the occupation, of the forced occupation of people living and camping out in the woods. And you know, because like the last two much more like militant actions were done during the daytime, during like large rallies. There was the protest on Saturday after Tortuguita was killed, where a cop car was torched. Then there was this protest on Sunday night that people marched to the power line cut, and then the police started doing repression at the music festival. But like those things were happening like during like before the sun was setting. So I think that is one interesting change. I feel like some people are definitely thinking about this, especially because there's been 23 people arrested during this week of action, and they're being held in jail. And we have no idea when they're going to be able to have the option of getting out. So I think this is something that people are thinking about in terms of how they are doing direct action, and how their involvement in direct action will affect people who did not participate, like with people at the music festival who were not present at the power line cut direct action, and how some of those people are undoubtedly now facing like punishment from the state. So I feel like there is definitely going to be some discussion about that. I've seen discussion about this threat in the city. But I mean, the week of action is still ongoing. It is only Wednesday. It feels like it's been a month, but it's only been like 3 or 4 days. But I mean, it's people are in this for the long haul. We're starting to see more solidarity from groups that are less militant, like with the Interfaith Coalition, right? Like I don't think any of like the priests or the clergy were there throwing Molotov cocktails at the surveillance tower. Yet the very next day, they're standing outside of City Hall and demanding the same things that the people throwing Molotovs are demanding.
And it should be noted that they didn't denounce that. It is solidarity really nice. Across the movement.
Absolutely. They talked about how them as clergy, and in the history of Abrahamic religions, how many people associated and are the figureheads of such religions have been killed by the state, and how often these religions have been in opposition to the state during their formative years. And they
I don't know. I just can't think of any prominent Christian figures or Jewish figures who were murdered by the state. That's just nothing's coming up right now.
None. Zero. Yeah, no, I grew up Christian and I can't really remember anyone.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that is the week of action so far.
Cool.
There will certainly be a more detailed deep dive with like analysis and like, a narrative through line in the coming weeks as we're actually able to like look back on what has happened.
Of course.
Interviews with more people who are like actually involved, like interviews with like organizers, protesters, forest defenders. But despite the massive amount of repression that we've seen on Sunday, the increasingly like heavy-handed response police have had to both direct action that includes property destruction and nonviolent direct action. Despite all that, people are still continuing to be in the woods. They are not letting it scare them away. The woods are still a place that the people are able to like exist in. They're still able to live together in the woods, stay in the woods. The cops don't like being in the woods.
No, there's a real fear.
That's why they're trying to tear them down. Yes.
The cops are still very much scared of the woods. And people have not let the violence shown by police scare them away from wanting to stay in the forest. So that is something that continued every day. There's been like guided tours throughout the forest showing off the different types of plants, the different sections of the woods, different old campsites that people have slept at. It's been pretty nice to see with just the incredible level of resilience.
Well, I know that I am, and I'm sure many people are kind of watching this from a distance, and very happy to see that folks are continuing to adapt and endure and take punches. It's unfortunate that the punches keep coming, but the ability of the community to take those hits and continue iterating and adapting remains tremendously impressive. I think kind of the note that makes most sense to end on is to say that this is still a winnable fight.
Absolutely. And that is a sentiment that literally everyone on the ground shares. Like, we are at a point where, like, people keep saying, like, at this point, they have to win. Like there is no other option than winning. And people have the ability to win. This is a winnable fight. And that is something that people continue to talk about, and that is why people are fighting so hard. That's why people are risking getting these ridiculous charges, because they know that this fight is both worth it, and they know this fight is winnable. Like the actions and the risks that people are taking are not for nothing. Like they know that it is impactful, and there is a very good chance that this will lead to victory, and will lead to the forest being preserved, to being protected, and being able to continue to grow.
It does have a feeling of inevitability that they will win. That we will win. I don't know what the appropriate way to say that is as a journalist, but the feeling is that Cop City will not be built, and that is something that's shared, I think, by all of the activists in this city.
And I guess the last thing I'll say is Atlanta Solidarity Fund. You if you've been listening to any of our coverage, you should already know what it is. You can find the Solidarity Fund at atlsolidarity.org. You can donate there to help the forest defenders and anyone who was arrested in relation to this with legal expenses, lawyers, that sort of thing.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode, and we'll have more from you, Garrison, and more from Atlanta soon. Until next time, everybody, keep an eye on shit. Hey, we'll be back Monday with more episodes every week from now until the heat death of the universe.
It Could Happen Here is a production of Cool Zone Media. For more podcasts from Cool Zone Media, visit our website, coolzonemedia.com, or check us out on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find sources for It Could Happen Here updated monthly at coolzonemedia.com/sources. Thanks for listening.
Kids, pets, life, your sofa sees it all. But with a washable sofa, stains don't stand a chance. All of our sofa collections come with fully machine washable covers and cushions, making cleanup effortless. Liquid and stain-resistant fabrics provide extra protection against everyday messes. Plus, with modular designs, you can rearrange your sofa however you like. Perfect for growing families and changing spaces. Starting at just $699, it's time to upgrade to a stress-free, mess-proof sofa. Visit washablesofas.com today and save. Offers are subject to change, and certain restrictions may apply.
There's a difference between liking a house and actually getting it. Redfin is built to make up that difference and close the gap between finding and owning the home for you. Redfin agents close twice as many deals as other agents. So when you find a home you love, you're not a step behind when it comes to making an offer. That means less watching great homes disappear and more focus on the one you'll call home. Redfin helps turn saved listings into real addresses. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
Well, the holidays have come and gone once again, but if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now, you call it an early present for next year. What do you have to lose? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time 50% off regular price for new customers. Upfront payment required. $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan. Taxes and fees extra. Speeds may slow after 50 gigabytes per month when network is busy. See terms.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.